hybrid role co-sponsored by the City of Los Angeles's Economic Workforce Development Board and Department. In this role, I teach and advise and serve our populations that come to our workforce centers. Many of our population we serve with adult education and workforce development is naturally they're underrepresented, underserved, and so this is the people I work with on a daily basis. I go and work with our returning citizens population to help them with employability skills and training. I work with case managers and social workers across the city of LA to deliver training, employability skills to a vast, diverse group of our underserved populations. In addition to that, I also I serve on the board for the Venice Family Clinic Early Head Start Policy Council and work with those families to help shape the Early Head Start Family Parent Committee. I am the eldest of a large family of 8 children, large military family, and my military childhood involved many moves and transitions, which included 3 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 2 high schools. I'm also the first person in my family to attend a 4-year university. My mom has the equivalent of a 3rd grade education from Thailand. My dad joined the military very young and was able to take some college classes, and that was about it. So it was up to me when I wanted to go to college to form and create my own college pathway, financially, academically, in just about every way. And might I remind everyone, this was pre-internet and computers, so I was still filling out FAFSA and application forms the old-fashioned way with paper and pen and mailing those in. No websites to give me any information. Get the big old college book. So I really understand and can relate to our first generation college students and the massive level of support and help that they actually require and need. By nature of my skin color, by nature of the many places I've lived, of being from a large family, by, I guess, today's standards, we were considered poor. I've just lived, racial dialogue my entire life. I understand, perspective of not being from an affluent family and having the socioeconomics to support sometimes the goals and aspirations that you want to achieve in your life, and how difficult that can be. In terms of race and that, one of the places I did live in my youth was South Carolina and Florida. And if you've ever been in part of that world or part of this country, you can probably understand that the level of racism in those states, in those areas, especially in the 70s, was something that I couldn't even comprehend today. As much as we see it still exist. I was absolutely, many racial slurs were directed my way, and I thought at the time that was just, what should be the norm and acceptable. I am a graduate of University of Massachusetts at Amherst. I earned my Bachelor of Arts there in English and came out as a technical writer and worked in the tech field for many years. I later earned a master's in knowledge management from Cal State Northridge. And then later, after some years, went back to earn my master's in counseling education from Loyola Marymount. During all that time when I had kids and I was going back to school, I experienced both roles. I experienced a role as a mother who stayed at home with my kids, and I experienced the role of being a working parent. So I can also relate to a diverse group of parents and their family household situations in our district. I'm really proud of the work we've done at the district for the past 5 years. The past 4 years have been challenging, to say the least, with the way our national landscape went. and how that did not support public education, education in general, public service agencies, working people, healthcare, the boat. So we had our work cut out for sure in the last 4 years. And apparently 2020 was going to be the cherry on top and present to us even more challenges in education. So I'm grateful. I'm very grateful that we have a district that understands this, that we have a staff that is well respected and smart and bright. It doesn't mean that I discount that there is not work to do. But at the same time, living these past 4 years in a very divisive political landscape where where fear has been the main source to breed any action and perhaps the wrong type of action in our country, I really want to be cognizant that we don't have leaders at any level that operate from a place of establishing and fostering fear and inaccurate information and constant negative narratives that really prevent us from doing the work that needs to be done. I've mentioned our staff. In case you didn't know, we have a wonderful Superintendent, Leslie Lockhart. She's a woman of color, and she is well respected and brilliant, and she's just valued and well respected across the state. And I was really proud to be board president when that hire came about. We have a assistant superintendent who identifies as, like myself, as LGBTQ. And we have 2 other women, our high school and middle school principals are women of color, and 3 of our 5 elementary principals are also women of color. So I am keen on supporting those people that we have so that we can truly do the work ahead with them. I want to amplify their voices and make sure they are getting the support they need, absolutely. With that in mind, I guess I'll touch upon something that I want to make sure doesn't happen in our district, and that is performative allyship or tokenism. And, simply put, tokenism is just covert racism. And racism requires that those in power maintain their privilege by exercising social, economic, or political muscle against people of color, or sometimes even in a more subtle fashion. It still achieves the same, while giving those in power the appearance of being non-racist and even perhaps champions of diversity, because they might recruit and use people of color as racialized props. And I've been there before. And I want to be clear that I support our staff 100%, and I do not support tokenism or performative allyship. This is not what we want in our district. So I will be there to support them and make sure we go in the right path. I have always been a champion for education, for first-generation students, for veterans, for women, and the LGBT community. I was the first board member from Culver City to go to our California State School Board Association conference and speak along with my other board member at the time, Tiffany Spellman, and 2 other superintendents from different districts on LGBTQ issues for staff and students and how to better support them in our school districts. I have a lifelong commitment to social justice and equity. I truly support focusing on improving the lives of all people. I do it in my day job as well as in my board work. And being able to use education and advocacy, civic engagement, policy analysis to do that work. So that is it for me. Oh, and probably the most important thing you should know is that I'm a huge Dodgers fan. So I love baseball, and that I want you to make sure you don't forget that as well. So thank you so much. And now you can open up for questions.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question here. First, let me say we're having technical difficulties with turning on the chat. So our workaround is to text questions, if you have questions that occur during the meeting, to 310-489-8642. That's 310-489-8642. And I'm going to announce that from time to time so people can get in their questions that way. My first question to you, Anne, thank you for your presentation, and thanks for participating in this. Comes from someone who would like to know if there is another candidate running for these two board seats that you most align with. Who is that candidate, and why do you feel that way?
That's a good question, because we have 5 of us today, or six of us today, and I've only truly worked with one. So it can be a difficult question to answer. I will say this, then the thing we have here is we have 5 Democrats who are running. So I'm going to guess that we are all, for the most part, socially and politically aligned, just by way of that affiliation. So I'm not sure. I would say to some extent, all of them, a little bit. I guess the process, the issue isn't so much what kind of things we align with, because you can still align and perhaps disagree on the methods used. For example, I truly believe that I can be aligned with you socially or politically, but if you don't support our staff, I'm not going to be aligned with you. So that would be just one example.
Okay, fair enough. I think there's actually 6 Democrats participating today, as far as I can tell. Anyway, we got this from the organization Vote 16 Culver City. What is your position on young people in politics, and how would you support your view of young people in politics if you were elected to the board?
Absolutely support young people in politics. And I voiced that publicly in many board meetings, that I do think we should consider lowering that voting age. We have many students where these policies impact them directly. Absolutely. I will say that part of my work with supporting the youth was even acknowledged when our ASB president, 2 of them, Shane Goldberg-Smith and Natalie Stalin, invited me to be the board member speaker at their school, the high school's leadership conference. And they invited me to be part of that because of my support to the high school students and to their work in civic engagement.
Okay, I've got a question here that is kind of timely. Have you sought the endorsement? This is kind of a long-winded question, but it boils down to it's very specific. Have you sought the endorsement of Protect Culver City or the Culver City Police Officers Association? Have you accepted donations from either one of those groups, or any of the officers or board members of either one? Or have you actually been endorsed by either one? That was the Protect Culver City, and which is the organization, I believe, which is against the rent control law that the board has already passed.
Okay, I'm glad you clarified that, because I didn't even know who they were.
Yeah, Protect Culver City came about, and they put the anti-rent control ballot measure on Culver City's ballot.
Okay, so no, I guess I can confidently say no, I have not. I don't have either of their endorsements, nor have I received any donations from either group.
And you haven't sought their endorsement?
No.
Okay. What's the proper role of police officers in schools?
It's interesting. That's an interesting comment, because we've changed so much in the last few years. We had our emergency crisis safety forum, almost 2 years ago now, in response to all the similar to the Sandy Hook shootings, all the school shootings that were going on in response to that. And during that time, we had many parents, and we had over 200 people at that forum, that said, we need a safe school. We need presence that says, we don't want our kids to be at harm for any type of thing that's going on, and globally across the country with these school shootings. And that was so understandable. So now it's really about, and now we have a different trend happening and a different awakening happening with safety in our students and our schools. So it's a matter of really looking at both sides and making sure we have safety at the forefront of the conversation from all perspectives, right? I don't think you can say, any extreme is good. And I'm definitely not of that mindset. I want everyone to feel safe. And that should be my goal as a board member. Everyone feels safe, whether it's from school shootings or from, harms that are more personal nature, characteristics like racism, sexism, sexual assault, and that nature. It is a good time for us to look at how all schools are going to use school resource officers and security in the schools for sure. And we just passed and talked about this publicly as a board. And so we do need to be part of those conversations.
Let me ask you this one. This is also very specific. Who do you support for LA County Board of Supervisors for the 2nd District? There's a runoff race between Herb Wesson and Holly Mitchell right now. Do you support either one of them?
Yes, I've endorsed Herb Wesson.
Herb Wesson. Okay.
And I just, in fact, attended the LA County Dem Party virtual kickoff a couple hours before this where he spoke. I don't believe Holly was there, but so yeah, I participate in many of the LA County Dem Party events and endorsed Herb.
Okay, great. Let me go to this next one here. This is back to the question of police on the school campuses. Under what circumstances should a student be handcuffed, detained, or arrested by a police officer while at school?
Handcuffed is pretty harsh. That being said, we have had, and of course I can't, we have to remember there's information I have that is confidential and private, but we have had students who are nearing the age, there are students who have complained that they do not feel safe around other students for some pretty violent acts that have happened. I don't support the idea of using restraints or handcuffs. That being said, I have heard from students and families where I've been shocked at some of the stuff that happens on schools. And I don't know how many of you have been on a high school campus, especially a large one, that have felt when a fight breaks out between two older students who are large in stature, and it becomes a terrifying event for other students. And so I don't want to say never, because I don't necessarily use absolutes in that, but it should be the last resort. It should be an absolute minimum. And we should have training for officers and our SROs and security to know, more importantly, that is the case, that we don't advocate that as the first or second or third line of approach.
Let me ask, what if you have, say, a math or social science class, what is an adequate class size in your opinion, and what can a school board member do to keep the class size at that amount?
Whew, that is a good one. I will tell you, frankly, my opinion is that I would love to keep class sizes at 15. Is that a realistic number in public education? No. Is that a realistic number when we talk about our schools are funded by ADA, people in seats? No. Is it realistic when we have a school district that's bursting at the seams population-wise, but not growing facility-wise? No. So there's many things we can do as a school board. We can't create land. I can't create buildings out of nowhere. However, we can partner with cities. We can see how to better leverage land or other school sites we do have. And more importantly, school board members represent 5,000 elected officials throughout the state of California. My work, of course, would be locally, but it would be irresponsible of me, I feel, to not take those public education issues to a larger scale, to Sacramento. And that's what I have done in the past. You need to take them to, you need to take them to your board of supervisors. We need to take them to Sacramento, and we need to say, here's our issues. How do we get them? How do we better serve students? Perhaps in the way, like you said, having, maybe some smaller class sizes if need be, so that we can better serve our students.
Okay, I have another one which is more general. What is the most important thing you hope to accomplish as a school board member if you're reelected?
We have been talking as a school board for years about really closing that student achievement gap. Sometimes we get derailed when other board members come with pet passion projects, and that's understood on some level because we may have them. But if you're a board member that repeatedly comes with a new project that derails us from working on student achievement, then that's a problem. We have not been able to address that even though we talk about it. And the work does not come from a board meeting where we pass a resolution and then do nothing. There's an African proverb that a friend told me once that I will loosely translate, is that when we pray while moving your feet. And that is my goal, is to stop just praying, because I think we're all done with thoughts and prayers at this level, but it's now about doing the work. It's now about doing the behind the scenes work. And sometimes that work is supporting our staff, giving them the room to do it and the time to do it. And sometimes it's about saying, we can't focus on this priority right now or this thing. We actually have to focus on our student achievement gaps that are existing and that inequities that are existing in our school district.
Okay, this is a question about students developing emotional intelligence. Given all of today's challenges, has the school district done anything to develop emotional intelligence in students? Mm-hmm. And they wanted to know also, if yes, at what levels? Mm-hmm. And they also want to know, from your perspective, is this sufficient? Why or why not?
So I'll first start by saying some of the things we have done, and that has been some of my work on the advisory panel with the Youth Health Center. We've talked a lot with the Youth Health Center people about how to get those interns from LMU to help with mental health support services and really use them as a better partner. The other thing we've done is we've brought in mindfulness coaching and teaching at middle schools, at elementary schools, and at high schools. It's a little bit of a challenge because we are state mandated to provide a certain set of curriculum, A through G requirements, that take up time during the day. Perhaps that means we need to fit in some type of more mindfulness, emotional, intelligence training. I've always said that I personally feel that in some way, I hope and want to advocate more, that there should be consent conversations and dialogue and training that goes on with our middle school and high schools, and what it means to give consent and what that is. So there have been efforts done, especially with the mindfulness and really teaching about being present and mindful in schools across all levels of our schools. It's still work that can be done, and we can absolutely partner with our other agencies more. But everyone's a bit different too, and everyone has a different set of needs, and we need to be aware of that as well.
Yeah, I've got one here. What are some of the challenges during this virtual learning process, and what are the ways you will help the schools deal with these issues?
What isn't
relating to the pandemic, obviously.
Yeah. What isn't a challenge during distance learning and during this COVID-19 world, right? I've experienced on both ends of both my school districts. What this has actually exposed, this pandemic, unfortunately, and I'm part of it with LAUSD right now as well, is the massive digital divide between our communities. So that has been one challenge, like understanding that not everyone has internet at home, not everyone has a device at home, And even if you do, you're lucky if you have 2 or 3 devices, right? So I work with parents who would love to take a class so they can go and get a job. They can't take the class because their student needs the one device the school loaned out to them so they could attend virtual learning during the day. This digital divide has exposed that it will continue to set back our communities, you know, who are socioeconomically disadvantaged in that way. So I think we should work with private sector in this regard. I really do think we need to say, private sector, you need to step up. Companies that are moving into Culver City with lots of money, development companies, you need to step up. You need to come in and tell us how you might be able to be part of our community in this way. Now, I could go on and on, Pete, about all the other challenges of distance virtual learning, in terms of instruction, in terms of what it means for the family. Parents didn't sign up necessarily to be homeschoolers. Students are missing out on so much of the, you know, interaction. But at the end of the day, I also want to say, when we can tackle the digital divide issues, there have been some small growth points. And so to your point about, you know, resilience or grit or really growing in this moment, wow, do we have an opportunity to grow in this moment? And I've seen it firsthand with some of my own students where they have said, I wouldn't have had to learn these technology tools if it were not for this situation. And now I'm there. So it's not ideal. And I'm not saying that happens everywhere. It's absolutely a challenge across the board, but there are a few things we can do. And I do think that getting that digital divide, you know, issue addressed and seeking how we can figure out a better partner with our private, you know, partners is a good way to go.
Okay. That relates to another question, which is, do you think remote learning is the wave of the future? And if so, how did you come to that opinion? What is it based on? It sounds like you've already answered that question in a way, but if you have any thoughts in the last 30 seconds of our time here, if you want to add to that, go ahead.
I'm going to give you my, I guess I'll speak just for myself right now. I don't necessarily, I love when I went to graduate school, I voluntarily chose not to select any class that was strictly remote. You do lose something, you know, in that, where there's a disconnect with human relationships, body language, all of that. That's important with in-person learning. I did take a hybrid class, which worked. It did allow me to be able to be home. At the time, I had gone to graduate school, I was working, and I had children. I needed some of that flexibility. And I've got to imagine there are many of our families who are that. You are blessed if you can afford, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have bills that you worry about during the day, so you don't, you know, for whatever it means, that you don't have to worry about having a 9-to-5 job, and so you can take a class in person during the day. But for many of our families, that's simply not their situation. So for some, remote learning is good for them when they can tackle the digital technology issues, right? I don't know if remote learning is going to be the complete wave to our future. I think it's too much of a in-person schoolhouse system to go that way yet. But it could be that we will learn to harness right now the actual good parts and the benefits to some of the virtual aspects, the remote learning aspects.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to cut you off. Thank you for your time and your willingness to come and participate. And I'm going to put you in the waiting room and let Paula in. And thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Okay. So.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, how are you? This is Paula Amezola de Herrera, and it looks like your husband and your daughter are right behind you there. Hi, folks.
Yes, thank you.
We're going to ask you a few questions, but first we're going to give you up to 15 minutes. You can take 1 minute or up to 15. Just say whatever you like, and when you're done, we'll take questions. You can stop at any time, and I'll cut you off at 15 minutes.
Great,
So
thank you.
this is Paula Amezola de Herrera, and we have right now 65 people here. So go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself and my family. I'm grateful to be here sharing space with you. I especially like to thank the Culver City Democratic Club for coordinating this event and inviting me to discuss my priority areas. Now, my name is Paula Amezola de Herrera, as it was mentioned, and let me introduce my family. My son is not with us. He is a rising senior in college, and he is away in upstate New York. However, let me give you my husband and my daughter to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Will Herrera, and I've been married to this amazing woman for over 20 years. And as a 20-year public school educator here in Los Angeles, I'm her #1 supporter for the CCUSD board. I stand behind her progressive agenda for all Culver City students. And this is our daughter, Maya.
Hi everyone, my name is Maya Herrera, and I am a junior at Culver City High School. And I've pretty much been in Culver City schools for as long as I can remember. I'm pretty sure it's preschool, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, thank you all for taking the time to get to know my mom and her platform. So thank you all. Good luck, Mom.
Thank you. Let me begin by saying that I am bilingual, I'm bicultural, and I'm running for school board because I believe it's the right time to do this. I'm a first generation college student. I was born in this country. I'm also a first generation born in this country whose parents immigrated into the US in the 1970s to find a better life in the US. It was difficult for them to make a living because they had very little education. My mom only went to 3rd grade, and because of these limited opportunities, we moved back and forth between the US and Mexico as a child. This experience has made me bilingual and bicultural, and I think one of the most important things, it has made me resilient. I want to acknowledge my parents, Eva and Salvador Amezola, who tried their best to give us a better life. Without them, I would not be here with you. I grew up in Uruapan, Mexico, which I just found out is one of our Culver City's first sister cities. And I have lived in both of these sister cities in 2 different countries. And my heart gets filled with joy and a sense of belonging every time I see the street signs in front of our city hall showing me that I'm only 1,421 miles from Uruapan, Mexico, where I spent my early childhood, and I still have family there. Going back to my story, my migration back and forth is one of the reasons I was placed in ESL classes, which today are called English learner classes. Being an English learner has been one of my life struggles. And this is also a reason I went into science, because we didn't have to write essays. Back then, some might say that I would prefer to do a calculus problem or a chemistry problem anytime over writing an essay. My editors can confirm that for me. I received a BS in genetics from UC Davis, which at the time was the closest UC to my Central Valley home. And then I continued on my studies at the University of at UCLA, where I received my Master's of Public Health. And today I work at the University of Southern California as the career advisor for grad students in public health, where I help these students find their passion in public health. As you can imagine, and as you can tell from my story, I had to overcome many barriers: language barriers, financial barriers, unstable housing, limited educational opportunities. And these experiences make me determined to help all children in our school district, regardless of their barriers. We all have different struggles, and I want to shift our students' perception of their struggles from deficiency to resiliency strengths. Because these struggles are opportunities. They're opportunities for us to learn from losses, to build assets, to persevere through obstacles. I know this from personal experience, and I know that these are my strengths. The reason I'm running for school board is because I want all CCUSD students, despite their struggles that they might be facing, to be prepared for life, for college, and a career. I'm running for school board to be the voice for the voiceless, to make school more relevant for all students, to advocate for the funding needed to keep our schools safe during a crisis such as the coronavirus pandemic, and to fight for all students, and especially our most vulnerable, who right now currently might be living the most severe struggles of their life. Let me talk to you briefly about how I plan to do this. Let me transition to my priority areas. I have 3 priority areas that I want to focus on, and that is equitable education, health and wellness, and housing stabilization. I am looking forward, let me start with equitable education, because I am looking forward to working with all our 11 schools and together strengthen our community of learning for all. First, I'm in support of ethnic studies for California schools, AB 331, which will be California's first state to mandate ethnic studies as a high school graduation requirement. Education research shows that ethnic studies strengthens underperforming educational outcomes. It helps bridge gaps between different cultures and leads to students with more global accepting perspectives. You can see my website for the research being conducted at Stanford University. As a board member, I plan to lead an initiative to grow an ethnic studies program across the district, building an already extremely successful Spanish and Japanese immersion program. See, my family my children have went through El Marino Elementary, and I currently have a nephew through La Bayona Spanish immersion program too. The second equitable education that I would like to talk to you today is about equitable budgets. One of our mandates as board members is to review our district spending. I will focus on equitable spending and take a critical look at how we are spending our money. What are we spending to elevate the students who have the most needs? What are other needs that are not currently being funded? I will make sure to advocate for us to align our spending and ensure that our spending reflects our Culver City values, which we value diversity, and we need to start spending to protect that diversity. My professional experience has given me the opportunity to manage large budgets. As a research manager at USC, I was responsible for setting, managing, and balancing over $5 million in federal grants. As a governor appointee to the State Board of Vocational Nurses and Psychiatric Technicians, I oversee a yearly budget of more than $17.5 million. Third, here closer to Culver City, I am the chair of Parks, Recreation, Community Service Commission, and we review and make recommendations on the budget, which this year it was 9.5 million, and we had almost a 14% decrease. Now, during the pandemic, the budget was critical, and there was a proposal to eliminate the only mental health service that the city offered. I quickly responded to this and recommended our city council to please reconsider. As a public health professional, I alerted the city council of the COVID-19 study that showed that depression increased by 12% nationally in April of 2020. Through my advocacy with the council members and community coalitions, we were able to restore these services, and our city tripled their investment in mental health. This is the type of advocacy and collaborative work that I plan to bring to CCUSD School Board. Now, I know that this pandemic is bringing budget cuts, and according to my statewide contacts, the state might be experiencing a 30% decrease in funding in the next few years. Historically, fiscal responsibility during budget crisis has led to a decrease in funding of services for the most underserved. As an English learner, and for example, our English learners are not receiving the needed resources. 3 out of 4 EL students are not ready for college, so I will propose enhanced programming for our English learners. such as pairing our native speakers with our English learners for conversations and tutoring, and investing in teacher development so that they can have the instructional strategies they need to support EL students. While participating in the school board meetings and ad hoc budget committee led by Dr. Kelly Kant and Dr. Tashawn McKeithen, it was clear that the EL teachers were requesting more uniform training. We need to listen to our EL advocates in the district and properly fund their evidence-based ideas on how to improve our EL student performance so that they too can be prepared for life, college, and career. Now, investing in early education for vulnerable children can make a huge difference. It can strengthen the workforce, can grow our economy, reduce later social spending. We must be prepared to do the right thing, even through budget cuts. Now, I know that I still have two more discussion. The second one I would like to discuss is health and wellness. As a board of 5 members, we have the responsibility of setting the direction of our district. And I would like health and wellness to be a priority path for our district. Today, I would like to speak to you about the Instagram platform, Dear Culver. I would like to start with a quote from Malika Sadesar, co-founder of Rights for Girls, a human rights organization working to end sex trafficking and gender-based violence in the U.S. I hope for and work towards a world for the next generation in which every girl and woman is valued and can live out her full potential free from violence. I too hope to build a community at CCUSD where our girls are free from violence and actually all our students have safe environments. I will bring Culver City, Dear Culver Instagram issues to the forefront. And some of these issues include sexual harassment, racial microaggressions, lack of response from school administration. This is the culture our students are living through. Hundreds of personal stories have been told on this platform, maybe because there was no other safe place to tell these stories. We need to create safe places for our students to be able to talk. And one of those is in 2018, as part of my Culver City role as commissioner, I led an event called Everyone Deserves to Feel Safe. This was done by the Talk Project, and it was an amazing presentation. This could be a solution. This is a peer-to-peer, evidence-based program focused on building a safe community, building a safe consent culture, and empowering youth to become leaders. We need to build projects like this. We have a lot of more work to be doing in this field. We need more counselors too, so that students have an opportunity to build relationships with their counselors. We currently at the school district, we have a high ratio of student to counselor, and administration needs to use these counselors for discipline and administrative duties. I propose that we need to, we have choices. We have a choice to relocate school budgets to hire more counselors and mental health staff, or we have the choice to bring, to think innovative and bring partnerships to our school district so that we can continue building on projects such as the Talk Project. I want to say that my mental health, my health and wellness platform priority is not just based on the Instagram platform. It's also based on data. In a survey done between 2015 and 2017, 14% of our 9th graders seriously consider attempting suicide. In that same year, 33% of our 11th graders had depression-related feelings. If elected, I will make it a priority to bring in additional health and wellness support staff so that our students have someone to talk to and have safe places. And I think that's time.
Yeah, I was just going to call time. We started a little late, so we're ending a little late. I want to ask you a couple of questions here.
Sure.
One of them is if you support one of the 2 people running for for LA County Board of Supervisors in District 2, namely Herb Wesson or Holly Mitchell, which one do you support?
Holly Mitchell.
Mitchell, okay.
She has
And-
been an advocate for our city. My daughter went to an event where she was a keynote speaker, and it's absolutely Holly Mitchell without thinking
No
it twice.
problem. With which of the candidates that are running against you for these 2 seats, the other 5 candidates, do you most align, and why?
I believe Dr. Kelly Kent and I have similar values when it comes to housing stabilization and diversity and equity in our school district. And I know this because she invited me to participate in a ad hoc budget subcommittee. So
Okay.
Dr. Kelly Kent.
Dr. Kelly Kent, very good. And have you sought the endorsement? Now, this is a kind of an involved question here. Protect Culver City is the organization that is against rent control in Culver City, and they put the measure on the ballot to make it required a referendum and takes the power away from the Culver City Council. Have you sought the endorsement of Protect Culver City or the Culver City Police Officers Association? Have you accepted donations from either of those groups or from any of the officers or board members of those 2 groups? Or have you actually been endorsed by either of those 2 groups?
I'm not seeking endorsement. I am not going to accept any support, financial support. And I actually want to speak briefly on why I think it's important for our city to continue supporting Measure B. As I mentioned earlier, my personal experience of moving provided a childhood where I had housing instability. And I know that we need to protect the stability, our housing stability of our families and our teachers. And we know that education does not happen in a bubble. And we need our board, our school board, needs to think of children as a holistic manner, and we need to serve all our students. In public health, we call that looking upstream. And I truly believe that it's important for the school board to protect our most vulnerable children, those who are struggling through poverty, unstable housing, single parent homes, and the more likely children. And these events are traumatic events for our children. And every time you move, it's a traumatic event, and it can have implications for mental health and worse health outcomes later on in adulthood. I want to say, please, everyone on the line, I am actually one of the founding members for Protect Culver City Renters. We have advocated to put renter protections, and as a school board member, I would say these will impact 1 out of 4 renters in our school district have school-age children. So I am for renter protections, and I am going to vote no on Measure B.
I think that is that the designation for the anti-rent control local Measure B? I guess I should know that.
Yes.
Anyway, okay, I wanted to just make sure that was what you were referring to there. What's your position on the place of young people in politics? This was coming from Vote 16 Culver City people. How would you support these views if you were elected to the board?
I have a 16-year-old, and she is wickedly smart, and so is my 20-year-old son. They have a great education. I strongly support Vote 16, and I think that it's our youth who is at the forefront of the BLM movement, and I think it's important for us to continue supporting the youth and their drive to make us a society that we provide for all, not just a few. And so yes, I'm 100% in support of Vote 16.
How about this is a question about the diversity in the student body, and how do you ensure that the faculty reflects the diversity of the student population?
Well, one of the priority areas for me is stabilization of housing. I believe strongly that if we implement strong housing stabilization measures such as protecting our renters and such as collaborating with our city so that we build affordable housing, that it's going to be easier for our teachers and our staff to come to our city and to also stay in our city. My children have been through this district and they've lost. Actually, my children have lost great teachers that have moved away because they can't afford the rent here. And so I think my platform is combine the ethnic studies. If we build ethnic studies, we need to bring teachers to teach teachers from diverse backgrounds to teach the ethnic studies, and we need the housing so that the teachers can afford to come and live here. And so this is why it's so important for us to couple these two priority areas for our school district.
Okay. If you have, say, a math or a social science class, what's an adequate class size in your opinion? And what can a school board member do to keep the class size at that amount?
Well, I do have a 20-year experience educator in my household, and oftentimes we talk about having class sizes be at 15. However, I know that this is a very challenging ratio, and I don't think with our current budget that we can achieve that. But we can think about creative ways of bringing in supplemental resources to our classrooms. But yes, we've had this discussion, and the dream number would be 15.
What are some of the challenges during this virtual learning process, and what are ways that you would help schools deal with these issues? We're talking about virtual classes and learning.
Yes, I'm very concerned with what is happening currently. We understand that the teachers and the families want safe schools, and it's a critical time for us to really think about what we're doing to provide safe environments. The Culver City Parks Recreation Community Service Commission held pocket camps during the summer of 8 to 10 students, and they implemented safety protocols, and both families and staff were safe throughout the summer. Now, this program was continued into the fall, but it has some limitations. Only 48 students have access to this, and it's almost $150 to attend this program. And the most important one, and I think that something that we need to change, is that it's only for Culver City residents. We need to be treating all our students equally. We can't treat our students who are residents and provide more resources and services for them compared to those students who are not residents, who are here on permit. And it's important for us to understand that if our group of permit students are 25%, we get 25% of our budget allocated from the state from these students. And so if we were to lose all these permit students, we will lose 25% of our state budget. And so it's important. What I'm saying is we can improve providing safe environments for our children during this virtual learning time. For example, I have a Bring Wi-Fi to the Parks campaign. I think it's super important for our city to bring Wi-Fi to the park so that our children can Zoom and take their classes from our community buildings, and that we have PRCS, the department has access to do 200 students in supervised environments. And this is just one example. And we need to build more safe environments for our children, that we put safety protocols, that we work collaborative, and that we have a safe daycare for our children. Education does not happen in a vacuum. I understand that, and I'm looking forward to serving our students and providing stabilizing homes and childcare needs for our students and our families.
Okay, I've got probably the last question here. We are running 2 minutes behind, so we'll give you until about 2 minutes after the hour. But given all of today's challenges, has the school district done anything to develop emotional intelligence in students? And they would like to know, if yes, at what levels have they done this? And from your perspective, is this sufficient? And then why or why not? Emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I think that what's is clear to me from what I'm hearing, what I'm reading on the Dear Culver, and the mental health problems that have been documented in the data, is that we're not doing a great job at it, and we need to do better. And that's why it's one of my priority areas. I think that we need to strengthen the Vote 16. We need to strengthen the POC for Change, BPOC, I believe it's called, BPOC for Change student movements. And through empowerment of our children and our youth, we will be able to improve their emotional intelligence and their community. It's so important for our students to be able to feel that our schools are their community, and that's not happening right now, and it's not happening for many reasons. And we need to model for our students that we can build community. And how we can model building community is by having conversations. It's by coming together and discussing and talking about the yeses and the nos, and how we can come to a collaboration and to a consensus so that we can move forward. And so we can be doing so much better to build community for our students and modeling for them.
Okay. This can be a quick one, I guess. Do you support implementing a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline in the school district?
You know, this is an issue that I'm currently researching, and I understand that there's an audit that has happened, and I'm looking into the audit, and I'm trying to get the documents from the audit. So at this time, I am not prepared, but what I do want to say is that I am for protecting our environment. I am I repurpose and reuse and recycle, and all my organics are put in the green bin. And so I think what I want to say is, like, we need to protect our environment because that's part of who we are. And if we don't have a safe place to live, then we're not going to be healthy, we're not going to be thriving, and we're not going to be prepared for life or college or a career. I mean, look what's happening up north with the fires. So it's really important for us to make climate change a priority in all our communities.
I think that we're talking about reporting, letting people call in anonymously and report the way money is being spent improperly or something like that. It sounds like a hotline on trying to save money, it sounds like to me. Was that the understanding you had when I asked the question?
Nope, sorry, I misunderstood, but I think there's an audit, and I'm trying to get my hands, I've sent emails to our city council, and I'm trying to get a hold of that audit and what's happening.
Okay. Well, I think we can wrap up this half hour. We've run a little bit over, but we started a little bit late, so I think we're just about at your half hour here, Paula.
Can I have just some parting words?
If you keep it to about 30 seconds.
Okay. So all I want to say is that in the spring we had an unprecedented event where overnight our children's lives changed. No more live sports, no more games, no more live performance, no more recess, no more play dates. And we've learned so much from March of 2020. And we now should be working towards how we can live safely, how we can prevent the transmission of this pandemic. And we need to do this for ourselves as adults. We need to do this for our children. We need to do this for our community, for economic wellness. And we need to make sure that as we learn more, that we do better. And one last thing I want to say, and these are my parting words of another Latina leader from the Central Valley, and that is that sí se puede. We can all make a little effort to change our environment, to change where we live, maybe tutor an English language learner student, help a student with a scholarship application. Please, everyone, do your part. And if you like what I talked about here today, please vote for me November 3rd.
That's 60 seconds. So I'll thank you very much, and I'll let our next person in. Thank you, Paula. I let her in. Lauren. I'm getting my people mixed up. Hi, Lauren. Can you hear me? Let's unmute.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Yes, very good.
Perfect.
So we're running a couple of minutes late here, as you know.
Okay.
So we'll give you a couple of minutes at the end. Hopefully we won't get too out of control with that. We do have a glitch in the technology. I wanted to keep announcing this to the participants. Instead of putting questions in the chat, please text them to 310-489-8642. 310-489-8642. And that's because I can't figure out how to turn the chat back on. So it's my fault, but we're working around it. Okay, you've got 15 minutes or any part of that to talk, and then we'll take questions. Go ahead. This is Lauren Jagnow. How do you pronounce your last name, Lauren?
Exactly as you did. It's Lauren Jagnow. Exactly as it looks. Yeah. So first of all, I want to say thank you very much to the Culver City Democratic Club for inviting me to be a part of this forum. I'm honored to be here. I know we all wish we could be together in person, but this is the next best thing. And again, I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all. I am definitely more of a dialogue than a monologue person. So I'm going to keep my opening remarks pretty brief, tell you a little bit about myself, who I am, what my background is, why I'm running for school board, and then I would love to start the conversation. I am originally from Chicago, the western suburbs to be specific. We call it Chicagoland. It's kind of like Disneyland, except with freezing winds. I am the daughter of a public school teacher. My mom taught English at the high school level, and in her later part of her career, she was actually an English language learner teacher. So my father worked in public relations, and he was he worked for nonprofit hospital systems. So from both of my parents, really early on, I gained two things: a deep appreciation and belief in public school, and also a sense of community service, that one of the best things that we can do as people is to give back to our community and help. I went to the University of Missouri, Columbia. I got a degree in journalism. I worked in journalism and then in entertainment. And I have two children. My daughter is starting her first year at Culver City Middle School this year. My son is going into third grade, or just started third grade at El Rincon Elementary. As you guys probably saw from my bio, I am very, very involved in parent advocacy, specifically with the PTA. I've been involved in the El Rincon site PTA for many years, I served as president. I just finished my term as president of that body last year. And I'm also involved in the Culver City Council PTA. And I'm really, really lucky because my husband has a really stable profession, and I've been able to dedicate myself to being with my children when they were small, and then being able to give back to their schools and their education, both as a parent volunteer. And I'm also currently a district employee. I'm a noon duty supervisor, depending on where your kids went to school. Some of them are known as red vests. So I basically get to hang out with the kids during lunchtime and recess. And I really, really miss doing that right now. I've had a lot of great opportunities to not only get to know families in our district, but also staff and teachers and administration through my work. So the reason I'm running for school board is one thing I've really learned by being involved in this district is that it does great for a lot of people. As we all know, there's many people who move to Culver City to be a part of this school district, but it's not perfect. And there are definitely people whom it doesn't serve as well as it can. And I really believe in amplifying those voices, the people that we don't always hear from, to make sure that this district serves them. I think that every child and young adult and adult that this district serves should feel seen by the district, and that they should see themselves in the district. So I would love to be able to help push this district to even greater heights, to work with all stakeholders to come up with some innovative and collaborative solutions to those things that we need to be working on, and to again, really, really serve every child. I have three main things that I'm interested in working on as a school board member. The first is continuing our work on equity. I've been a member of the Equity Advisory Council. I'm very proud of the work that our group has done. I'm sure many of you were able to hear the sort of master plan that we've been working on this past year. And I'm really excited to keep working on that and making sure that our district, again, becomes somewhere that every student feels seen and welcomed and represented. I also think a big area that our districts can continue to improve upon is the transparency. And by that, I mean communication. It's not a huge district. We're certainly not LAUSD. And I think that we can certainly do better in communicating to all our stakeholders what we're doing, how we're serving them, and finding out from them how we can serve them better. I think, like I said, I'm a collaborator. And so I believe the more voices that we can hear, the better we can do. And we have to keep those lines of communication open and very accessible. We need to make sure everybody feels empowered to speak up and make their voices heard. The third issue that I think the district can work on to improve, and something that I am dedicated to, is also, sorry, lost my train of thought for a second, is working to come up with innovative solutions. This is a real turning point. This pandemic and the resultant shutdown of the school system, or reimagining of the schools as we know them, I think gives us a huge opportunity to really assess what we can do better. I think when school's in session and everything is operating, we're all trying to make sure that we can keep things moving. The machine it's running, right? Well, now the machine hasn't stopped, but it's slowed, and it gives us an opportunity to say, how can we do this better? So I'm really interested in exploring some of those things. I think there's some really interesting things from the state level. For example, I think the fact that the UC and Cal State systems are moving away from some of the traditional standardized tests is a really interesting development. I would like to keep track of that and see maybe what that means for us at the elementary and secondary levels. What can we do differently? Can we move away from standardized testing? What are other ways to assess achievement? So I think ideas like that are things that I'm really, really interested in exploring as a school board member. I have one thing that I am definitely not interested in, and that is maintaining systems or ways of doing things because they're, quote, the way things have always been done. During my time, both on the PTA and also as a member of my community's HOA, we looked at a lot of things. We tried to improve a lot of things. And as we dug into things, we became really, really firm in the notion that if the answer that I hear or we heard regarding the way things are done is the way they're done because it's the way they've always been done, that's not a good enough answer. We can do better than that. We owe it to the students of this district to do better than that. So as I said, I am definitely more of a dialogue person, and I hope that gives you a little taste of who I am and what I'm interested in. So I would love to start the conversation with the members and hear some questions.
Okay, we've got some. This one is specifically for you.
Okay.
As a noon aide, you worked as a noon aide. As a noon aide, what is your experience with conflict resolution?
That is a great question. So I think I definitely believe in the idea of restorative justice practices that the district is working towards. And my philosophy with kids and with conflict between students is I think everybody gets to have their say, tell their side of the story and their experience and express their feelings. And I think really the most effective thing with kids is hearing both sides and encouraging them to hear the other side, the other person's point of view, the other person's experience. And a lot of times when they can just talk it out and say, this hurt my feelings, well, that hurt my feelings, and then an apology or some sort of resolution, it's magic. It really works. And I think everybody walks away feeling good. I'm not a big believer in punitive discipline. I think that doesn't do anything except make people feel alienated or misunderstood. And I don't think it's especially effective. I think, again, restorative justice is a much more effective way to help kids work through conflicts.
Do you have school-age kids?
I do, yeah. My son is in 3rd grade and my daughter is just starting 6th grade at the middle school, yeah.
Are they in Culver City schools or are they?
Yes, yeah. My daughter is she's at CCMS and my son goes to Allaire.
Great. So let's see. I have a question about the supervisor race for District 2. The LA County Board of Supervisors, Herb Wesson is running against Holly Mitchell. Do you have one of those two that you support? And if so, which one?
I do. I voted for Holly and I look forward to voting for Holly again.
Okay. Let me see what. Oh, of the other candidates that are running for school board, there's 6 of you guys participating here. So of the other 5, which one, if any, do you think you most align with?
You know, that's a great question. I don't feel confident enough to answer that right now, just because as this race begins, some of my fellow candidates, I don't know their positions well enough. I'm really looking forward to going back after our conversation and watching the conversations with all the other candidates so I can get to know their positions better.
Do you think there's a way that the school board can help see to it that the faculty reflects the diversity of the student population?
Yes, I think that's something that's definitely come up in the Equity Advisory Committee discussions. I think there are some really exciting ideas that document includes doing some more active recruitment for teachers from perhaps traditional like HBCUs, for example, doing some really mindful, thoughtful outreach to people, and also making sure that this district is a environment that is welcoming to a diverse staff, that this is a place where they want to stay, where they feel supported. And I think one of the first things that we're talking about doing with the EAC is making sure that our staff, that our current staff in our community is one that has done some anti-bias work. I think that's the first step. Again, you want to make sure that people feel welcome before you invite them into your home, so to speak.
Now, this is a question that involves a couple of local groups here. One of them is Protect Culver City, which is a group that started after the city council about a year ago put into effect a rent control, temporary rent control measure. And Protect Culver City has put a anti-rent control measure on the Culver City ballot. At least it says that takes the power away from the city council to institute rent control and gives it to a referendum of the voters. And it's retroactive. So the question is, have you sought endorsement of either of two groups, Protect Culver City or the Culver City Police Officers Association, the cops union? Have you sought the endorsement? Have you accepted donations from either of the groups? Have any of the officers or board members of the groups, have you accepted any donations from them? Or have you actually been endorsed by either of these groups?
No.
Okay. And there's a question that's related in the sense that it's about police officers in schools. What's the proper role of police officers in schools?
That's a great question as well. And I know it's one that the district and the board has been talking about. I really was excited about the action that Board President McBride and Superintendent Lockhart talked about in a previous board meeting in terms of shifting some money away from another school officer more towards somebody who can help with restorative justice. I don't think schools need to be policed. I understand that there does need to be security because there can be, unfortunately, dangerous situations, and there can be things that do require a law enforcement presence or participation. But I don't think it makes anybody feel safer to have police in uniform on campus. I don't personally believe in that.
Okay. Under what circumstances should a student be handcuffed, detained, or arrested by a police officer while on a school campus?
Oh, the only examples I can think of that being acceptable would be if a student was threatening harm to someone, if there was a threat of danger or harm.
Okay, let me find another question here. Here's one. Given all of today's challenges, and I think they're referring to the pandemic, et cetera, has the school district done anything to develop emotional intelligence in students? If yes, at what levels? And from your perspective, is it sufficient what they're doing, if anything? And then they say why or why not. So they're talking about emotional intelligence, developing emotional intelligence in students.
Yeah, that's a great question. I will start by saying that just with my own children, and again, talking to other parents and talking to PTA leaders, this school shutdown or distance learning situation and the pandemic has definitely been really emotionally hard, I think, on all of us, and certainly on kids. So I know that the district is using this first week of school to really focus on social emotional learning. I know that we have strong supports. We have counselors. I can speak most specifically about El Rincon. We have a wonderful counselor. We also have the Family Center, which is an absolutely wonderful resource. During normal times, it's a place where kids can go and work and be in small groups where they can work out interpersonal issues, or kids who maybe just need a safe harbor can go there. Again, I think it's an absolutely wonderful program. I've seen it work at our site, and it's something that I would love to see expanded to the other district sites. I also know that the district is working on some social and emotional educational. There's a program that I believe is called, it's step 2, where they start at early grades and they start building that kind of emotional fluency that I believe the question is referring to, where kids really learn how to advocate for their feelings, to be empathetic, to be a compassionate, emotionally confident human. And that is something, again, that I'm really excited to see the district taking steps towards developing at every site. And I would love to see that continue and grow.
I'm going to make a little announcement here because we've got a technical problem that we've been dealing with. So pardon me for taking some of your time here, but we don't have a chat, and that's because I'm technically incompetent and can't figure out how to turn the chat back on. So what we're trying to do as a workaround is ask people to send their questions, to text their questions to this number. This is Cynthia Hart's phone number, and she's the corresponding secretary for the club. It's 310-489-8642. Let me repeat it one time, 310-489-8642. Just text a question to that number if you have questions, since we don't have the chat, and I apologize for not having the chat. Okay, Lauren, let me ask you another question here.
All right.
Is there any strategies you can think of that the board might be able to use to increase the amount of revenue available for the school district for operations?
I love this. I love this question.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think, so this is circling back to what I was talking about in terms of trying to be innovative in our thinking. And there's a couple of things that I think most specifically would be interesting starting points. One of them is I would love for the district to expand our collaboration and our relationship with the city. I think especially in light of the fact that Culver City has become quite a hot destination, so to speak, and we have a lot of new companies coming in here, and we have a lot of new residents, and I would love to be able to encourage some of our new corporate residents, so to speak, to be good neighbors, to help support this school system. Because again, as I said, this school district is a well-known school district, a well-regarded school district, and I think some of the decision-making for some of these companies to come to Culver City certainly has to be, that would be a great district for our employees to be able to be a part of. So I would love to explore that. I also think that it is really important, and one of the jobs of the school board is to build relationships and advocate for ourselves at the state level, ideally at the national level as well. We can hope that that may be more fertile territory in the near future. But I think, again, at the state level, I think it's very frustrating because the state isn't as helpful as I think it can be. I think there's a lot of, here's what should be done and now figure out how to do that. And I think a lot of that has been apparent, especially during this pandemic. So again, I would really, really like to see our district reach out and build relationships and be able to advocate for ourselves at the state level. I can tell you this past spring, when the district, as well as every other district in our state, was threatened with really, really decimating budget cuts from the state level, I drafted a letter to Governor Newsom stating pretty plainly that education should not always be the first thing on the chopping block when it comes to budget cuts at the state level. And I was able to share this letter with a lot of the PTA heads at the other schools and with our community. And we had many of us who signed and sent this letter to Newsom's office. And I'm certainly not going to take personal credit for the fact that the budget did change in the school district's favor, but I do strongly believe that things like that do make a difference. And the chorus of voices makes a difference. As someone wise said, Newsom does not like to have people mad at him. So I think when we speak up for ourselves, we can affect change. So I think those are two really interesting ways to start looking at our budget. I think it's very, very hard to be given scraps, so to speak, and be asked to make a full meal out of it. So I would really like to work, and again, I understand this is a long-term goal, but I would really like to begin the work and continue the work of pushing the state and the federal government to fund education the way it should be funded.
Yeah, this is from the group Vote 16 Culver City. What's your position on the place of young people in politics, and how would you support these views if you were elected to the board?
I think young people, I mean, I think it's cliche, right? But to say young people are the future is both cliche and absolutely true. So I'm really, really encouraged by young people who are interested in being involved. I'm really excited about the organization here in our district, POC for Change. I think the Equity Advisory Committee was lucky enough to be able to speak with some of their leadership at one of our meetings. I think they're extraordinary. I was able to participate in the march that they organized in mid-June. And I just think that's incredibly encouraging. And I think that these are the people who are going to be inheriting the world. And I think they absolutely deserve to have a say in how that world looks. So as a school board member, I would continue to reach out to students and young people and try to, again, amplify their voices and their needs.
Now, this is probably, we've got about a minute left or so. This is about the situation we're in with the pandemic in schools. What are some of the challenges during this virtual learning process, and what are ways you will help the schools deal with these issues?
That's the million-dollar question. I was also on the school reopening task force this past summer, and those were the questions that we were grappling with all summer. I think one of the biggest challenges that I've observed, and I think that we can all relate to right now, is talking to one another over Zoom is not the same as being in a shared space. And I can speak for my children. They definitely get tech burnout. I know the teachers, it's not easy. I heard one teacher compare it to shouting into the mouth of a cave. You don't know who you're engaging with, you know? So I think that is one of the most difficult pieces. I also think there is the very real and immediate concern that not all of our families even have access to this tech. Not all of our families have access to Wi-Fi, or they don't have a space where they can concentrate and sit down without distraction. So I think that unfortunately where we are right now still with the pandemic is acute to the point where we're really trying to make the best of this bad situation. I'm hopeful that as California's numbers improve and maybe we can move to a situation of a little less lockdown, we can find ways to transition back to in-person, where we can have small groups, where we can open up some of our spaces for homeless students to be able to come and work, or foster students, or English language learners can come and work collaboratively together. I think this is one of those things where it truly takes a village. It takes all of us to chip in. And again, speak up. When we know the people who are struggling, we need to speak up for them and make sure that they get the assistance they need. And that comes from not just academics, but also, as an earlier question referenced, the social emotional needs. We need to make sure that we as a district continue to provide every service we can. So the whole child is cared for during this time.
Okay, Lauren, thank you very much. I'm going to usher you out of the meeting and usher our next candidate in. And thank you very much again for coming and speaking to us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed it. Have a good afternoon,
Okay.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Very good. Okay. Tiffany? Hi, Tiffany. You want to unmute yourself there?
Apologies. Hi.
Hi, Tiffany.
Hi. Thank you all so much for having me here, and thank you to the Culver City Democratic Club for inviting me. And I look forward to meeting all of you someday in person. I would like to start off just really quickly with a little bit of my background and what's kind of brought me to this place of running for school board, and then leave as much time as possible at the end for questions, because I'm really much more interested in what all of you have to say in terms of where you'd like to see the direction of the district heading, and what platforms and ideas are most important to all of you. And it's my hope that I can be a conduit for bringing some of those things to fruition for all of us. I'll start by saying I'm a native Californian. I grew up in Southern California, and went to college at UC Berkeley, where I graduated with a degree in English and a minor of Peace and Conflict Studies. I never wanted to be anything other than an educator. I'm the granddaughter and a daughter of teachers, and have wanted to serve in the capacity of ensuring that public education is free and rigorous and relevant and high quality for our students for generations to come. And have spent the last 20 years of my life working toward that goal. In my current capacity, I work for the Los Angeles Unified School District in the Division of Instruction in the Office of Linked Learning. I serve schools district-wide throughout Los Angeles Unified, from transitional kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, helping them in kind of bridge what is happening in our classrooms in terms of curricular content and what they're learning academically, with its applicability to the real world, and to how we can use those in preparation for college, career, and life. The goal for the students I work with and the teachers I work with now is that we're graduating students from our high schools who have some sort of post-secondary or college credits already in place when they leave our schools, that they are completely ready to enter academia with no intervention or mediation necessary, that they have some sort of industry-aligned certificate or skill set in order to attain living wage work, and that they have a path for what they would like to be doing with their future. On a sort of scaled back sense of where I came from in terms of this work, is really seeing how we can bring some of the ideas of 21st century learning skills and preparation to all of our students throughout the district, and doing so in a way that increases health and safety in all of our schools, you know, sort of a sense of equity and access for all of our schools district-wide, and really making sure that what we're doing for all of our students is preparing them not only for college, but for the 21st century workforce they'll be entering either in college and beyond. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Great. Okay. Oh, let me, is this, yeah. I'm just, let me start off by announcing that we have a glitch in the chat. We don't have the ability to turn on the chat. I take full responsibility for that, and I apologize. But we do have a workaround, which is to text your questions to Cynthia Hart's iPhone, and that number is 310-489-8642. Let me repeat that, 310-489-8642. And we'll try to ask your questions. We have quite a few questions here, and I'll start with.
I'm looking forward.
Okay. One is about the two organizations who are active in Culver City politics, especially lately. One is called Protect Culver City, and the other is the Culver City Police Officers Association, which is the union for the police here in Culver City. Protect Culver City was an organization that started up roughly a year ago when the City Council voted to have a temporary rent control measure and study the issue of a longer term rent control measure. They have since, Protect Culver City has since put a ballot measure on the Culver City ballot that requires a vote of the voters, a referendum to institute rent control. And it's retroactive to back before the time a year ago or more than a year ago when the Culver City Council put that measure on the ballot. So these two organizations, the person wanted to know, have you sought the endorsement of Protect Culver City or the Culver City Police Officers Association, or have you accepted donations from either of the groups or from any of the officers or board members of either of the groups, or have you actually been endorsed by either Protect Culver City or the Culver City Police Officers Association?
Yeah, I have not. I do not plan to, and have accepted no money from them.
Okay. Now this is related in the sense of police officers in schools. What is the proper role of police officers in schools? And there's a follow-up question, but I'll see if you have anything to say on that. What is the proper role of police officers in schools?
They only have one role, and it's to protect the health and safety of the students on campus, and to do that in the most kind of supportive way possible.
Under what circumstances should a student be handcuffed, detained, or arrested by a police officer while on campus?
Only if they are a direct threat to themselves or others. Under no circumstance otherwise would that be acceptable.
Do you have any strategies in mind to help increase the amount of revenue available for the school district operations?
Yeah, I have an extensive amount of experience with writing both federal, state, and local, well, 3 actually, state, federal, and local grants. I worked within my own office around generating millions of dollars in grants through the Career Technical Education Incentive Grant. I also worked on the development of the Strong Workforce Grant, and combined, those two have brought in over $12 million. I also worked with the Youth Career Connect Grant, which was a federal Department of Labor grant. And then I work with schools around getting funding for career technical education through Perkins, through Perkins.
Oh, what's Perkins?
Those are the, I'm so sorry I interrupted you.
No, I was just asking you, you said Perkins, and I'm ignorant on that. What's Perkins?
Yeah, Perkins is a granting fund source that directly funds teachers who are coming out of the professional workforce and teaching career technical education themed classes to students. It's a grant that funds the equipment that you would need for those courses. It would fund some of the credentialing for those teachers, and it also can in some instances contribute to the instructional materials they would need for those classes as well. So things like if a school wanted, for example, to have a course in theater arts and theater arts management. You could use that money to help find a teacher, hire them, and build a theater that would give all of the students the hands-on skills they would need in order to actually do that job.
Wow. Now this is about the Board of Supervisors race. There's a runoff between Herb Wesson and Holly Mitchell for District 2, the LA County Board of Supervisors District 2. The question is, do you support either of those candidates, and if so, which one?
Holly Mitchell.
Holly Mitchell.
Yeah.
Okay. And of the 5 other people that we have participating in this forum today, who are also running for the 2 open seats on the board of school board, can you name one of them who you would think that you would most align with? I don't know if you're familiar enough with them, but if you can, could you name which one you think you would most align
Sure.
with?
I'm going to give you my hedging answer, and then I'll answer your question. I'll give you
both.
In all fairness, I'm only familiar with the work of the 2 incumbents as I attend the board meetings and have been, sort of looking at them the most closely as they're the ones serving on our board now. And I'm very much looking forward to getting to know the other candidates who are in this work with me and are really looking to work together to improve the work that's taking place in our schools. And then I'll say, in terms of the candidates that I know, I'm most closely aligned to the work being done, in curricular alignment, CTE development, and budget development with Dr. Kelly Kent.
Okay. What would you say is what would you say is the one most important thing you hope to accomplish as a school board member if you're elected?
Oh, that is the most spectacular question. Thank you for asking it. I think the most important thing is I will scale back to move forward. In the very last board meeting we had with the student representative, she gave a very impassioned speech about the need for our district to really look at its policies and procedures around tolerance and inclusivity for all of our students, and really expressing the desire and the need to have the voices of our students and their families being heard and represented in what is happening in our schools. And really, if I could do nothing else, it would be to help have their voices not only feel like they are being listened to, but that they're being heard and that they're relevant, they matter, and that they have an effect on the direction we are taking as a board and as a district.
Okay, here's one specifically for you. What prepares you to advocate through policy making for an ethnically and racially diverse student body?
That's also a fantastic question. Firstly, I have a master's degree in curriculum and instruction for culturally relevant pedagogy and instructional differentiation for all students. So I'll start there. I also have a degree in peace and conflict studies. I'm completing a master's degree in educational leadership that also is looking at teacher education and urban policy management for whole school systems. I also taught in Long Beach Unified for 3 years in a very ethnically diverse classroom. And I taught in South Los Angeles for another 12 years in also an ethnically diverse classroom setting. And I support schools across Los Angeles Unified that span race, ethnicity, socioeconomic level, and et cetera. So I'm very well versed in how to do that from a classroom level, as well as how to write policy at the district level for getting programs and materials into our classrooms to better serve the students based on their needs.
Okay, here's one. How do you ensure that the faculty reflects the diversity of the student population?
I'm not sure that I understand that question as it's being asked. Is the question, how does the board influence hiring of teachers, or how does the board make decisions around hiring teachers who are representative of the students attending our schools?
I'm not sure how to break it down any more than what it says. Just, I guess it's certainly as a board member, can you think of any ways to help get the faculty to the point where it more reflects the diversity of the student population? That's the way I would maybe phrase it, if that's any help.
I just want to make sure I'm answering the question that's being asked. I think the first thing to do is, as a board, sit down and look at who are the students we're serving in our schools. I mean, we need to be looking at who are the people living in our community, but who are the students sitting in our schools, and what are the educational needs that they require? And do we have a staff that is adequately trained to meet the needs of those students? So we know that 36% of the students in our district are in need of some English language development services. Are we hiring teachers who are able to differentiate the instruction for students to meet those academic language requirements for our children? If we know what the breakdown of our students is by ethnicity and by cultural sort of perspective, are we making sure that we have teachers on our staff that are representing those? And just as importantly is having teachers who are representative of those very diverse perspectives, but that we are bringing in a curriculum and a series of instructional materials for our students that reflect that diversity and that reflect that wide range of perspectives and experiences that our students are bringing into the classroom? Are we making sure that we have teachers who are trained to capitalize on that from a growth perspective, as opposed to looking at students and categorizing them automatically just by virtue of one aspect of who they are?
Now, I have a question that you might be able to help me with here as part of this question. Let me read the whole question first. Some believe CTE pathways are the new, quote, tracking, unquote, because they encourage high school graduates to go straight into the workforce without college. And I'm curious what CTE is.
Oh, I'm so excited to answer this question.
What is CTE for my benefit?
CTE is career technical education.
Oh, okay.
So if you wanted to think about this from a historical perspective, if you were looking at education kind of from the 50s to the mid 70s, it was classified as what kind of my generation and previous generations would think of as shop. So it's those types of classes. That is no longer what career technical education is by any means. And I want to say really quickly, I'm a huge proponent of increasing the amount of CTE offerings we have in our schools, but I want to say that with the caveat that in no way should that be done through tracking. What we need to be what CTE courses do is offer students an opportunity to gain professional experience with professionals in the working world, to gain a series of skills that they can then use to find living wage work. But it in no way detracts from their preparation to enter college. They should absolutely be leaving us prepared to do both of those things completely proficiently. And then I will say also in line with that, as a sentiment, is very much this idea. If you were looking at this from the lens of the work that I'm doing with Los Angeles Unified and would like to see grow a little bit more in Culver City, that comes with a huge amount of student direction, voice, and choice. So students are not being tracked into pathways. They are choosing pathways based on their own interests and their own desire to move forward in a certain field of study.
So just for my own benefit here, I've never been a teacher. I have been a student, and I did take shop. It was a long time ago. What exactly, I guess my understanding of tracking based on what I've heard and on your answer is that early on the kid sort of gets stuck in these classes that are like shop, that there's no really college prep going on, and it's nominally it's to prepare them for work outside the in the workforce, but I know I can say
historically that's been the case. We've had students who have been tracked from middle school to, you know, and sort of in that early high school, they get tracked for a college kind of pathway and a set of classes they take in preparation for university. And then you would have another set of students who were tracked for immediate entry into the workforce. That is not what CTE reflects in our current educational system at all. In fact, it looks to combine those two things and make sure that students are very well prepared to enter the workforce from a professional lens. So you might have students, we are graduating students in Los Angeles Unified who they graduate with some networking certificate in Cisco certification, for example, or a coding language. And they can get into the university so they can get a degree in computer science, but can also get a job immediately with Amazon making a living wage. So the idea is that we're providing them the opportunity to take advantage of any or all of the pathways they are choosing.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer all of your questions?
That answered my questions, and
Okay,
I hope
good.
it answered the question of the person who sent that one in.
Sure.
Now, here's a question I've been asking. I think I've been asking everybody. I hope I haven't already asked you, because it's sort of getting a little muddled in my brain who I've asked which questions to. So bear with me and just tell me outright if I've already asked this question. But this was sent in by the Vote 16 Culver City people. What's your position on the place of young people in politics, and how would you support your view on this if you were elected to the board?
I cannot stress enough that the earlier we can get our students involved in civic action, civil politics, and understanding of the need and the obligation to give back to the community is essential for all of our growth and development. And I will, with the sort of precaution that I'm about to say something a little bit cliche, our children really are our legacy and they're our future. And the only thing, it is our obligation and our responsibility to leave them as best prepared to take on that job as possible. And that includes getting them involved as early as transitional kindergarten and kindergarten with what they can do to affect change in the world around them and in the city they live in and beyond.
Thank you. Okay, given all of today's challenges, has the school district done anything to develop emotional intelligence in students? And if yes, what grade levels have they done this? And from your perspective, is this sufficient?
Okay, this is multiple dimensional.
I know, it's a big question.
It is a big question, so I'm gonna break it down and answer it in chunks in hopes that I get to the whole piece.
Sure, I'll repeat any part of it if you get stuck on it goes on. So
yeah, so I'll start by stating that socio-emotional development is generally has a greater emphasis in instruction at the elementary school level. And I know I have twins who just started 5th grade, and I've watched them go through the 2nd step curriculum throughout their time in elementary school. And I think it's a really good place to start, but socio-emotional development and socio-emotional learning does not stop when students leave us at the end of 5th grade, right? So that's inclusive of our ability to relate to other people, to be resilient, to self-advocate, and to relate to others in a multitudinous settings, sometimes in the same situation. So making sure that we are continuing to progress the skills and our ability for our students to do that through grade 12 is really important. And I'll say one of the programs I believe most strongly in as a way of doing this is restorative justice. That the practices of restorative justice are not just about the idea of how we can teach students about conflict resolution. It's about the process of actually resolving the conflict and what it really means to do that and make an amends when something has gone awry. And also how we can give voice to our feelings and give voice to our needs and get them met. So from that perspective, I really see those types of skills, and how we do that needs to be age appropriate. So our high school students are looking at how they can do that not only with each other, but with their teachers and with professionals in the working world around them, as well as any other adults they meet in the world beyond our walls. So really making sure that we are giving them a way to do that at a continuous level of development is critical. And then I'll say, as we've moved to distance learning, the research is very clear that our students are going to need some additional socio-emotional support for reintegration back into school. We're starting to see some real issues with mental health concerns with our students, and some other, sort of sense of disaffection our students are having because we're separated from one another. And learning is such a social process. And getting our students back into a space to embrace that again is going to be a challenge our district, our board, our teachers, and our system needs to face.
Let me ask you, what was I? Oh, you mentioned that you are a teacher, am I correct?
I work now at the district office supporting schools that are implementing an instructional approach called linked learning. But I have been a teacher in the public school system since the year 2000. Mm-hmm.
And what grades have you taught?
Yeah, I taught grade 6 in Long Beach Unified, and I taught 9 through 12 in South Los Angeles in LA Unified. But then again, I've supported schools from transitional kindergarten all the way through grade 12.
Do you have kids, school-age kids now?
I do. I have 2 5th graders.
Oh,
They
twins,
attend
right? You said,
yes,
yeah,
I have twin
you
girls.
mentioned
They attend El Marino Language School.
El Marino, did you say language school?
Uh-huh.
Where is that in Culver
El Marino
City?
is in Sunkist Park.
Is that in Culver City? I'm not familiar.
It is. It's in Culver City.
Okay, I should know all the neighborhoods.
That's
here.
okay.
I'm sort of new to Culver City, relatively. I haven't been here 30
welcome.
years like most of the people on this call. Yeah. Do you live in Culver City?
I do. Yes.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Getting thing that we have short time here. Let me see if I can find a question that will not be too overwhelming for the time that we're in. Oh, yeah, this is one that a number of people have answered. In, for instance, say a math or a social science class, what is an adequate class size in your opinion? And what can you as a school board member do to keep class size at that amount, at that size?
That is a loaded question. So a couple of things are in place. From an educator perspective, the answer to what is an appropriate class size is really completely dependent on the needs of the students in your class. So if you have a class with a lot of instructional differentiation needs, smaller is better. Research around optimal class size in general, if we were just looking at a general education perspective, the magic number is around 15, which would be lovely. However, I know our budgets do not always allow for that. And I'm, in the face of where we're going with things sort of, post-COVID, I'm guessing that problem is going to be exacerbated. With that being said, however, I think that we can get our numbers lower in terms of the ratio of student to adult in instruction through partnering with our community and our local colleges to provide extension opportunities, dual enrollment opportunities for our students, internship opportunities for our students, and other ways of kind of helping students to gain some of those skill sets in a non-traditional classroom setting.
Let me just ask you what I hope is a yes or no question, since we're running short of time here. Do you support a police resource officer in schools to protect the students? Do you understand the question?
I do understand the question, and I think the answer is probably not yes or no. I think it depends on how that position is defined. I do support someone being in schools who can help ensure that there is health and safety that's happening in our schools and is being supported. Okay,
fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tiffany, we've reached our point where we're going to move on to our next candidate. So
thank you so much.
I just want to thank you very much for participating. And I'm going to
Thank you for
remove
having
you
me.
from our meeting. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thanks.
Bye. Okay, now our next candidate is Scott Zeidman. And Scott, you want to unmute yourself if you can there. Let me know if there's any problems with unmuting.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you. You're at the game, it looks like. You've got a baseball backdrop.
Fenway Park, what could be better?
Fenway Park. Where is Fenway Park? I know it's back east, right?
It is in Boston. It's the
Boston,
second
yeah.
oldest stadium in baseball.
Oh, that's right. It's a beauty. Well, hi, Scott. Let me give you 15 minutes or less to talk on about any subject you like. Tell your qualifications and whatnot, and whatever you want to say, you can cut that 15 minutes short and answer questions for the rest of the time. In any case, I'll cut you off after 15 minutes and start asking questions from the participants.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. So my name is Scott Zeidman. I was raised in Culver City. I came here in 4th grade, went through Farragut Elementary School, Culver City Junior High School, which is now Culver City Middle School, and then Culver City High School. After graduating Culver High, I went on to Loyola Marymount University, and then ultimately to King Hall, Martin Luther King Hall at UC Davis School of Law. When my wife and I were looking for a home to buy in 1995, we looked in Westchester and Culver City. And in fact, we could get more space in Westchester than we could in Culver City for the same amount of money. But we wanted to have our children grow up and go to Culver City public schools. And so we bought a house in Culver City. My life has been pretty much devoted to kids. During high school and college, I worked for the Parks and Rec Department, coaching kids. At LMU, I volunteered working with autistic kids at UCLA. During law school, I volunteered coaching kids. Once I came back to Culver City after law school, I coached various football, baseball teams, once again working with children. I've also been involved with local boards, including the Culver City Little League, Westside Baseball, Culver Palms YMCA. The last 7 years, I've been an appointed Park, Recreation, and Community Services Commissioner. And I've also been involved for the last 9 years with the Culver City High School Boosters Club. And the High School Booster Club exists primarily to raise money for extracurricular, athletic, and educational activities for high school students. And over the last 7 years, having co-chaired the casino night and also working on various other things, I've helped to raise over $400,000 for the high school. As you may know, I was on the Board of Education back in 2007 and from 2007 through 2011. And I really never wanted to be on the board until I went to one specific meeting. And for those of you who were here in 2007, we were told there was declining enrollment and we'd have to cut kindergartens. And that was tragic. And we had all the 5 schools, El Moreno, Farragut, Lynn Howe, La Bayona, and El Rincon, fighting with each other, the parents saying, don't cut us, we need to have our kindergartens, don't cut. There were so many people at the meeting, they had to hold it at Lynn Howe's cafeteria. And so I brought my then 8-year-old son with me and I said, Jason, we're gonna watch how local politics work. This is gonna be great. The board's gonna see how people really want this and they're gonna work something out to make it work. And the meeting started at 7 o'clock and we were there with about 150 other people. And the board put that issue last on the calendar. We went through the consent agenda. We went through a 20-minute explanation of West LA College's partnership with Culver City Unified. We learned all about Tracy Pamilia, who was appointed a principal at El Moreno that year. By about 10 o'clock, they still hadn't gotten to this issue. And I couldn't keep Jason there any longer. At that point, I realized that maybe our board wasn't connecting with our people very well. They knew that people wanted to talk about this, but they didn't want to be inundated with questions, so they put it at the end of the agenda so we wouldn't be able to ask them. At that point, I figured it's time to run. I ran in 2007, and I was elected to the Board of Education. And for the next 4 years, I worked as hard as I could to make our district better. My children were in the district. My son Jason went to El Marino, Culver City Middle School, Culver City High School, graduated there, and went on. He is now a senior at University of California, Santa Barbara. My younger son Brandon went through El Marino, Culver City Middle School, and he is now a junior at Culver City High School. So I believe in public education, and more importantly, I believe in our public education. So when I got on the board, there was a lot to do. And for the first 2 years, we got a bunch done. One thing we got done was there was $12 million that had sat for 12 years in a capital improvement fund that had never been used. My niece, who also went to school here, went through kindergarten through high school and never got the benefit of any of that $12 million. So we set out to spend that money, and we did. And that money went, and it can only be used for capital improvements. That money went to went to elevators, Robert Frost, the athletic field, and to start installing solar energy in our district. Again, 12 years and this money sat there and never was used. We also started the Environmental Sustainability Committee, which led to more solar at our schools, and an anti-bullying task force. And in fact, we were honored by Penn State University as one of the top anti-bullying task forces in the country. Shortly after I was elected, though, the state went through the dot-com bubble and funding was cut. And that was tragic for our district. We were faced with cuts and having to decide what to do. And our options were limited. There was potential furloughs, laying off teachers, laying off staff, laying off administrators, or pay cuts. We were able to maneuver our way through those cuts. And I'm proud to say we did not lose a single teacher's job. We did not lose a single counselor's job, and we did not lose a single classroom aide. All that are very important, all people that interact directly with our students. After the cuts, I co-chaired the Measure EE campaign. Measure EE was the first parcel tax. Culver City had never had a parcel tax before, and Madeline Ehrlich and I worked together to co-chair that. And in fact, the Democratic Club supported it and helped us. So I spent the next 3 months of my life campaigning for a parcel tax. Culver City had never, ever passed a parcel tax. And indeed, in the 2009 election, although there were dozens of parcel taxes in Southern California, only 2 passed. And the one that passed with the most votes was the Culver City parcel tax, Measure EE, where we garnered 74.9% of the votes. This raised $6 million for our schools and helped ensure our teachers, our counselors, our aides, and our other staff members, they could retain their jobs. Despite all the budget cuts and everything else we endured during my 4 years, our board left the district with a higher reserve than we started. And reserves are a little bit of a misnomer. The state requires you to keep 3% in reserve. That's 3% of your, and that at that time, $55 million budget. But you can never spend that 3%. So even if you have tough financial times, you're not supposed to be spending it, so it's a reserve that can't be used. We realized in 2011 that we were going to have problems again sometime. So we left an additional 2% reserve after our final meeting. And that left money to be used later on if it was needed. Unfortunately, it's all gone. During that term, we also had a superintendent search. And I think the board did an amazing job in choosing a superintendent. Myrna Cote left us pretty much with no notice. And we hired a search committee to find a new superintendent. The search committee gave us 3 very good names. For the first time ever, we allowed the union in to meet with those final candidates. And that was something that was very, very difficult to do. I had to first convince the board to allow the union to meet the candidates. After convincing the board, I had to convince the search committee to allow the union to meet with the candidates. The search committee told me that the candidates would not do it if they had to meet with the union. So I told them as president of the board, that's fine. Tell the candidates we're no longer interested in them. As you might guess, they came on and went to the interviews. The morning of the interviews, I was told by the district's attorneys that the union could not meet with the candidates because it was a closed session item. So we maneuvered, and we had the union meet separately with the candidates after our meeting that very same night. This was the way we collaborated with the union, allowed them input into it. After interviewing those 3 candidates, considering the union's input, the board was not happy with any of the 3, and we chose not to hire any of them, ultimately choosing to hire Patty Jaffe, which was an amazing choice. And despite raising $6 million in Measure EE, I think the best thing that our board did in those 4 years was hiring the right superintendent, Patty Jaffe, to lead our district. So you got to be wondering, what am I doing here today, having been off the board for 9 years? And I asked myself the same question. Well, our prior board has not been as fiscally conservative as perhaps they should be. And indeed, a couple of years ago, there was a parcel tax, not because the state cut the budgets, not because we had some other issues. We had to pass a parcel tax. We had to pass ourselves, I had to tax ourselves because the district overspent. And they were overspending by approximately $2.5 million per year, money they didn't have. And they had to seek the taxpayers to bail them out. I hope we don't have further funding cuts from the state, but I think anyone who's been watching has to believe the cuts are coming, and those cuts are going to be drastic. I've got experience in dealing with budget cuts. I've got experience in fiscal responsibility, and I'll admit fiscal responsibility is not sexy, and it's not something you want to talk about. It's so much better to talk about equity and teaching every child, but the district is a business, and if you can't balance your budget, you can't pay your bills, you can't pay your teachers, you can't educate your kids. So I'm running on a platform, first, of fiscal responsibility. We cannot continue to make budgetary mistakes because there's way too much at stake. I'm also running on a platform of options for students. Every student should take the A through G University of California requirements, but we need to give students more options other than just that. When I went to school here so many years ago, we had the opportunity to take shop classes. And in 7th grade, I took the wheel. Back then, we had the option of taking the wheel or home ec. I should have taken home ec, but I took the wheel. And with the wheel, I had metal shop, wood shop, electric shop, and drafting. I learned pretty quickly in metal shop when we were attempting to make an ashtray that I was not going to have a future in metal. In wood shop, I almost sliced my finger off. That was not going to be my future. I was happy to get through electric shop without killing myself. And I can barely draw a stick figure, so drafting was not my calling either. I knew at that point that I needed to work hard in school. My brother, on the other hand, loved the shop classes, went on to take auto shop, went on to build cars, went on to build slot machines, and from a business that started in his garage back in the 1980s, he's now a CEO of a corporation that hires 30, that does significant amount of income every year. And he did this because he had those shop classes. He did this because he realized he could work with his hands. We don't give kids that option now. We're forcing them all into one area, and those that can't do it get frustrated. Academics are oh so important, and don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but we have to give kids options. Mark Twain said, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, some of these kids are going to love being craftsmen. They're going to love being electricians. Give them that opportunity. We don't anymore. I also want to talk about music and art. If we have budget cuts, we have to make sure we preserve music and art. I can give you studies up and down. Music and art stimulate the brain development in children, and that's from a Northwestern study. Music and art can lead to a larger vocabulary and increased reading ability. Music and art actually result in increased attendance. The last study from the National Association of Music Education shows that 93.3% attendance for schools that had music and art versus 84.9% of schools that didn't. So if you have music and art programs available for your students, they're going to come to school more, they're going to learn more, and they're going to be better off. Well, on the subject of music and education, let me give you 3 quotes. The first is from Dr. Carrie Friedman, the head of art and design education at, am I done?
We've gone through 15 minutes here,
Okay.
and so we've got some questions for you.
Have at it.
The first one just came in. If the district has to make cuts this year, what would you cut first?
Great question. The first thing you always look, I haven't looked at the budget and what's out there, but I've been told that there's been a study that says that we are top heavy in administrators. I haven't seen the study. I believe that the district and the board have that study. Our population size of school hasn't changed dramatically since I was on the board. And yet I hear there are a significant number of additional administrators. So you have to ask yourself, why? Why are there more administrators now than there were in 2011? So the first thing you always look at is positions that aren't going to deal with students firsthand. Every position is important, and I'm sure that every administrative position is important as well. But you don't want to pack kids in classrooms. You don't want to take away staff that is necessary. So the first place you look is you look at administrators. You also look at how you can better evaluate your costs and how you can cut costs. There are numerous ways we did back in 2007 where we were able to modify things, change things. And in fact, when we brought in the solar, we brought that in to cut our electric bills. We were able to turn restricted capital improvement funds into general funds by cutting down what we spent. So by cutting the electric bill, we had $200,000 or $300,000 more we could spend on teachers, staff, etc. So as I answer today, I can't give you exactly which position I'd be in favor of cutting because I haven't seen what's out there, but you always look away from the children as much as you can.
Okay, I've got one that was sent in specifically for you. So Scott, your candidacy is supported by Protect Culver City founder Ron Basilian, who ran for Congress as a Republican against Karen Bass, and who supports Donald Trump. So the question is, why should a Democratic club endorse a candidate embraced by the far right?
I hope to be embraced by everybody. The far right, the center, the far left. I didn't seek Ron's endorsement. I didn't know I had Ron's endorsement other than I saw on a website that they support my candidacy. I hope to get the Democratic Club's endorsement. I hope to get every endorsement possible. I don't believe everything that Ron believes, and unfortunately, I probably don't believe everything the Democratic Club believes. But if these people believe in a nonpartisan election that I'm the right person to be up there doing it, then I'll accept anybody's endorsement, whomever he or she is, or whatever group that may be.
Okay, here's one that I've asked everybody so far. Have you sought the endorsement of Protect Culver City or the Culver City Police Officers Association or accepted donations from either group or from the officers or board members of either group? Or have you been endorsed by either Protect Culver City, which you say you haven't, but have you been endorsed by the Culver City Police Officers Association?
Okay, so let me go into more detail with Protect Culver City. I was invited to a forum to speak along with 3 city council candidates. I had no idea who was going to be speaking there. I had no idea how many school board candidates are going to be speaking. I'll accept any forum I can get, whether it be a Zoom forum, 3 neighbors, or if they're having a barbecue and they're going to feed me, I'll gladly go there. So I'll speak in front of anybody. I don't know how many other people that Protect Culver City had. I saw on their website recently that they're supporting my candidacy. I never sought their endorsement, but I'm excited to have any endorsement. With respect to the Police Officers Association, I have not sought out their endorsement. They sent a 9-page questionnaire to, I believe, every school board candidate. And I filled out the 9-page questionnaire. I called them up, got the name of the person who came up with the questionnaire, who was not part of the police department, and I read him the riot act for having such a poor questionnaire. But certainly, if the Police Officers Association wants to endorse my candidacy because they think that I will be a good candidate for the nonpartisan school board election, especially in light of the school board's budget has nothing to do with the police budget, then I'll gladly accept that endorsement, as I will the Culver City Democratic Club or any other endorsement out there. If people think I'm going to be good for the job, I will gladly accept their endorsements. But no, I haven't received any money from, we just opened a bank account recently. I've received no money from Protect Culver City. I don't know who their officers are, so I can't tell you if I've received any money from them, but I've received so little thus far. And I don't know who's in the Culver City Police Officers Association, who the directors are, but I haven't received any money from them or the organization.
Okay, will you solicit or accept donations from the oil field operator Sentinel Peak Resources?
That's the successor to PXP, I'm assuming. No,
Inglewood oil field.
I was on the commission or the committee that was initially formed to try to keep them from expanding the oil field or continue drilling and everything else. And I worked on that commission for 3 years. I have no interest in taking money from the oil field. And so the answer to your question is no, I haven't solicited. Money is helpful, but some money is not. And I won't take money from the oil field.
Okay, do you support one of the two people in a runoff for the LA County Board of Supervisors District 2? That would be Herb Wesson and Holly Mitchell.
I
If
know.
so, the question
Yeah.
is which one, if you do.
Yeah, I have, my name is on Herb Wesson's support list, endorsement list, and I joined him quite a while ago. I've had minimal contact with both. I sat in Holly Mitchell's office back in 2011. I think both are really good candidates. I know Herb, I believe Herb's kids went to our schools, and he was very involved when he was here. And anyone who's going to go to our public schools, keep their kids in our public schools, and then do public service, I'm certainly in favor of them. I think I'm so strongly in favor of our public school system that I think that in that respect, I'm supporting Herb.
Okay, thanks. Which of the other candidates running for school board this time around, there's 5 others that are participating here today. Which of those 5 candidates, if any, do you feel like you align with the most, and why?
Wow, that's a tough question because I haven't seen much about them, but let me address each one separately. I campaigned for Kelly Kent and for Ann Allaire back in 5 years ago, 2015, and I consider both friends. I think both have their hearts in the right place and both are doing the very best they possibly can. I don't always agree with everything they say, but I think they're both great people. I've known Paula Amezola Herrera for the last 2 or 3 years, although I think I knew her before when our kids went to school together. Paula is on the Parks, Recreation, and Community Service Commission with me. I consider her a friend. I think that her heart is in the right place. I don't know Tiffany or Lauren. I don't know what their politics are. And so I haven't seen any websites. I haven't seen any flyers. I don't really know where anyone's coming from. I know that the 3 women that I know are great people, and I'm sure they'll do a fantastic job on the board, and they'll give it their all. They're not going to do this for any stepping stone or anything else. They're committed to our district. But to ask of the 5 of them, I don't know where they stand. I don't know how many agree with fiscal responsibility. I don't know how many agree with keeping music and arts. I don't know how many agree with adding the shop classes and the other alternatives. And so I can't, and I don't want to punt the question, but I can't answer because I really don't know where they're coming from yet. And if this forum was in a month and they had campaigned and there was flyers out and I could see what they wanted, I'd be in a much better position to answer that. All I can tell you is I'm sure Lauren and Tiffany have their heart in the right place. And I know for a fact that Paula, Ann, and Kelly do.
Okay, this is a question from the Vote 16 Culver City organization, which advocates for the local vote being given to, the Culver City vote being given to 16 and 17-year-olds, at least city council vote. They would like to be able to have the right to vote for city council. What's your position on young people, on the place of young people in politics, and how would you support your view on that?
Wow. When I ran in 2007, my oldest was 8, my youngest was 2 or 3. I had the 8-year-old campaigning with me, talking about issues. As they grew up, we went over issues. We invited their friends to get involved. In 2011 campaign, I brought in dozens and dozens of students to get them involved in politics. We need our students to get involved now, not just to talk, but to do things, to go protest. My older son was protesting not too long ago. I encourage that. I think that's amazing that they're getting involved. So how do you do it? Back in the day when Gilbert GR was a teacher at Culver High, all students in her class had to participate in a political campaign for 2 hours. A lot of the candidates had them stuffing envelopes. That's a complete and total waste of time. I brought those candidates to forums, and after the forum, we'd sit down at a table and they'd critique me and tell me where I'm right and where I'm wrong and why I'm wrong, getting them involved in the campaign. And now I look 9 years later and I see those students now listed as supporters of mine, and they know they can speak to me. With respect to 16 and 17-year-olds voting, wow, I have a 16-year-old. And other than my campaign, I don't think he knows much about the city council campaign. So if we're going to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote, we have to do everything we can to get the word out to them so they make an informed vote and not a popular vote. So I guess I'm not necessarily in favor, but I'm certainly not against having 16 and 17-year-olds vote, but we have to do an educational process for them so they know what they're voting for, as opposed to, I've heard this gentleman's name or this woman's name, or he's coached me in Little League, because I think that would be a waste of a vote. We have to educate them.
Okay, let's move on to another question. Given all of today's challenges, and I think they're referring to the pandemic and all of the upheaval that we've had in our schools, given all of today's challenges, has the school district done anything to develop emotional intelligence in students? And then the second part of the question is, if yes, at what levels? And from your perspective, is this sufficient?
I wish I could answer that question. The answer is it's not sufficient, whatever we've done. I'm not sure everything that we have done, but I can guarantee you it's not sufficient. And no matter who you elect this election, it still won't be sufficient. We need to go so much further with our students. But I can't tell you what we've done. I just can tell you we need to do more. And that means, and that it's tough in tough financial times, we need to hire more counselors. We need to hire more people. We need to change our textbooks. Our textbooks are teaching us history that isn't necessarily true. Unfortunately, and no one wants to hear it, but all of that costs money. We need to do it. We need to find the funds. We need to get the grants. We need to teach our kids the real truth of what's going on, and we need to work with them emotionally and educationally. And whatever we're doing, and again, I don't know how much we're doing, it's not nearly enough.
What are some of the challenges during this virtual learning process? And what are ways you will help the schools deal with these issues?
The challenges are, at least the last semester, I think there was a lot more distance than learning. And the schools were sort of blindsided into this, and I can't blame them for not doing a great job, but I don't think the job was sufficient. And I don't think anyone will doubt that the job wasn't sufficient. In fact, it was so not sufficient that I put my son in an online English class in addition to his regular English class through a school that's made to be online. And I saw the differences. And the online schools, who had years to develop, were much better than we were. We're only 2 days into the new semester, and I'm seeing a lot of improvements. But in 2 days, it's too hard to determine what should have been done, what should be done. And the other thing is, and it's not punting, but the board oversees the superintendent, who oversees the IT department, who oversees everything else. I'm not an expert on how to best teach, nor would I ever second guess the teachers that are doing that. We need to give the teachers all the tools they need to best be able to teach our kids. So I don't have a specific answer for you because it's only 2 days into the semester. Last semester was not acceptable by anyone's standards.
Do you support, I'm sorry. Do you think the district does a good job of serving children on permit? Do you think that they do a good job of serving them equitably?
Yes. Well, let's back up, because in 2007, when we had lots of money, I campaigned to cut down the number of permits. And let me explain why. I went to Culver City High School. We had about 450 people in my graduating class. There were 3 classes there. When I got to run for the board, there were 4 classes and about 2,200 people in the school, which was about 700 more than when I went there. And I thought, thinking back, it was crowded. So I went to the principal of the high school, Dr. McGee, and said, why do we get 6 minutes to go to class instead of 5 like when I was here? Is the campus enlarged at all? And the answer was no, the halls are so crowded, the kids can't get to their class in time, they need extra time. Well, that's the wrong answer. So the question was, why do we have so many students in the high school? And the answer was, we're allowing anybody in. And that's great. We should allow anybody in to the point where we reach whatever the theoretical maximum is. So back in 2009, we put an arbitrary maximum of 500 people per grade in the high school. We have a number of permits in the elementary schools. In fact, we don't have enough Culver City kids to keep all 5 elementary schools open. So we have a number of permits. Then we're allowing another up to 100 permits in the high school and the middle school, in addition to the permits we had before. The one thing we did is we expanded upon the requirement for permits to do better in school. We want those children to be excellent. We don't want any kid not to be excellent. So we added that. Right now, in the financial situation we're in, we need as many permanent students as we possibly can to the point that we don't exceed capacity. Fortunately, because a lot of it's going to be online, all of it this semester, and likely some next semester, if not all of it, and likely in the future, some people may actually like the online. Our capacity is no longer as large as, nor as small as it used to be. We may be able to get significantly more students in. We are a destination district. People want to come to our district, and to the extent that we can allow them in and there's space for them, then I'm all for it. The problem becomes when we have so many students there, they can't get to class, they have to wait in line at lunch and can't buy food because there's too many people because our cafeteria was set for significantly less. At that point, we have to put a stop to it. But right now, especially with online, there's no limit.
Okay, I think we can wrap it up here for this half hour, and I want to thank you very much, Scott, for participating in our forum. I'm going to let in our next candidate.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, goodbye.
Next candidate is Kelly Kent, and I'm letting her in as we speak. Hi, Kelly. And you can unmute yourself there.
Hi.
Hi, Kelly. Welcome.
Thank
You've
you.
got, sorry, we got started a couple of minutes late. We fell behind over the course of 3.5 hours here, but not too far.
Not too
So
far.
we'll get you a couple of minutes at the end. So you've got up to 15 minutes to say whatever you like, and then you can take questions anytime you want to stop, or I'll cut you off at 15 minutes and we'll ask questions for the second half. So go ahead, Kelly Kent.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Kelly Kent, and I'm on the Culver City Unified School District Board of Education, and I am running for re-election onto the school board again for a second term. So yeah, I've had the honor of serving this district, and it has been incredibly fulfilling work, but that work must continue. So I want to start by telling you about what I've accomplished on my first term. You'll hear me say it many times again, and I've said it many times before, my lens is always going to be equity and inclusion, and that's been part of my first term commitments, and it absolutely will be part of my second term commitments. So I want to start there. In my first term, the district passed a Safe Schools resolution immediately in the wake of the 2016 presidential election, when students and families felt uncertain about their role the community schools might play in cooperating with government agencies. And so that was a huge win, and it was in a really urgent manner, which was responsive to the community needs, but also critically important and more in the long term, we formed an equity task force. And that has been a 3-year project, but in the most recent year, we have conducted a strategic planning process. And our equity strategic plan is scheduled for adoption on Tuesday. And that's a huge win because it's an umbrella over everything we do that informs all the work with equity first. We also formed a special education district advisory committee as part of our process of moving toward fully inclusive practices, which means that we're putting our students with disabilities on the same roster as our students in the general education population, which means that special education students have the same access to curriculum, to content, to instructional best practices, and all classroom materials. And it may sound like that should be obvious and a no-brainer, but we are still building towards that. And then this year we adopted a K-12 full inclusion policy. So that means we are committed to that, and it's in our legislative package. I have served on the City of Culver City's My Brother's Keeper Committee since 2016, and through the school district city partnership coalition work, of which I am a big part, I was able to support the city as they moved toward and ultimately approved a My Brother's Keeper action plan. And then just a month later, the school board passed a My Brother's Keeper resolution committing our superintendent to improving the educational outcomes of boys and men of color. And then I've also been really involved in maintaining our district commitments to environmental and institutional sustainability. So sustainability has been a big piece of the work that I've accomplished. Our district was recognized in 2017 by both state and federal governments for a decade plus of sustainability efforts led by our Environmental Sustainability Committee. And that committee existed before I was there, but I came in and jumped right in the deep end. And so part of my first term work has been getting our environmental purchasing policy and our green schools operation policies passed. And then I have been able to get the sustainability coordinator and committee reinstated in this past academic year 1920, and that's after a 2-year hiatus. So that was a real struggle. And in this past school year alone, it was really just in the past 6 months, that coordinator identified tens of thousands of dollars in school savings that will help offset future budget cuts as a result of the pandemic. And speaking of fiscal maneuvers, you may remember me from the Measure K campaign, because I did lead a very successful local campaign for Measure K, which secured $2.3 million in annual revenue, which put us in the black pre-COVID. Hashtag vote yes on Prop 15. We need schools and communities first to pass. I'm also really involved in promoting the arts. So my first term has had a huge arts commitment. CCUSD has always been known for its commitment to the arts, but that's no different with me on the board. We also did a strategic planning process for the arts. And so I was an integral part of an arts strategic plan that was adopted in 2019, which commits us to equitably expanding arts instruction and integration throughout the district each year. But also in my first term, CCUSD rehabilitated the now state-of-the-art Robert Frost Auditorium. Hopefully some of you guys have been there. We constructed a brand new science building for grades 6 through 12. We installed air conditioning on all sites and maker spaces on all elementary school campuses. So while we cannot be there in person right now, I'm really looking forward to our students getting back on campus safely as soon as possible to enjoy some of those new facility upgrades. And then with respect to safer schools, I have a very strong commitment to school safety. And while I was president, I led the passage of a firearms safety resolution. And this requires that there's an annual notice that goes out to all families, all guardians, of the legal obligations regarding safe gun storage and a compulsory signature. So right now, all families are getting notified of the safe gun storage laws, and they must sign to acknowledge receipt. And that was a big deal. And then another point with respect to accountability. So also during my presidency, I was responsible for instituting an accountability tool that appears on every single agenda now, and it was not there before. It's called Pending Matters. It's really very simple, and it seems like it should have been there already, but it wasn't. It's just a very simple new addition that allows the board to hold district staff accountable and on deadline for direction that's given at board meetings in public. It can be related to any item, it can be small or large, and it can be on a range of issues across the breadth of school board oversight, but we just did not have the means of holding feet to the fire in terms of direction that we had given and coming back and making sure that implementation was occurring, because it doesn't always fall under the realm of a particular policy. Sometimes it's just practice. And so that was just a big accomplishment. So I do want to talk about what I'm going to do in my second term, of course. And I do have 4 platform points that I'm going to present, but I really actually decided to start with a story, because my first platform point is, of course, equity, because everything is about equity for me. And I will in particular say that we have an opportunity to reimagine schools, whether we wanted it to arrive or not, because of the pandemic. And so if we don't get it right and do equity first and use that as the lens from the beginning this time, then you know what, I'm not going to forgive us. So again, equity is going to come first, but I know that term is being used by everyone, and it's a cliche term, and especially in education. So I want to tell a story to kind of frame that for you. I'm going to tell a story about a 10-year-old student in the district. So a 10-year-old student in the district who is an inter-district permit student. So this is a student who lives in the LAUSD area, but attends Culver City Unified Schools. And I don't know how many of you know, but inter-district permit students are held to a very, very different set of standards than residents, okay? They have a different set of standards academically, grades. They have a different set of standards in terms of behavior, in terms of attendance, in terms of tardiness, okay? They also have a limit of the number of infractions that they can commit before their permit is revoked. This is very serious because permit revocation is actually expulsion, right? So it's actually kicking a kid out of school, but the state, so Sacramento, doesn't count it as an expulsion. So it's a way of kicking kids out of school without it being a mark on our discipline record that the state pays attention to, because it's just a permit revocation, okay? So think about that. And then I'll tell you the story about this student, which is that he had committed 2 infractions and then he committed a 3rd infraction. And that's when I got a call from the family. And this is a Latino family. And the family called to say that our son said the N-word in school. Okay, so this was a big deal and it was super disturbing. And I want you to picture a 10-year-old child and I want you to picture a 5th grader, all right? And so the school district revoked his permit, threatened to revoke his permit when I got involved. And I thought about it immediately from a number of different perspectives. One, I thought, gosh, I happen to know that we do not teach slavery properly in all of our elementary schools and to all of our students. And we don't actually accurately teach the history of slavery as violence and murder and torture, and about the legacy of slavery that would lead any 10-year-old to understand that using the N-word is violent and hostile, okay? So I don't know how we can hold a 10-year-old responsible for understanding what that word means if we haven't taught that 10-year-old the history that factors into the gravity of using such a word, right? That's the first thing I think. Then I think about what would we do if a resident had used the N-word, because I know residents have used the N-word. Do we expel them? I thought about that. I thought about, well, what's going to happen to this kid? Because he's going to probably end up going to whatever the bad school is that mom and dad wanted to keep him out of to send him to Culver City schools. And what's that trajectory? Are we then contributing to what's likely to only be a less preferred trajectory, which might very well be part of a school to prison pipeline trajectory? And also, we wash our hands of a 10-year-old. We're done with them. We don't know what happens. We don't know what the end of that story is. And are we really able to make such a choice? And so I did have to kind of get out of my lane. I did have to intervene. And that student is still in the district now. And those parents now attend almost every single board meeting because they're going to be engaged. They're going to be paying attention to board level decisions and community-wide discussions where they weren't before. And that's a really big deal. And I wanted to tell that story because it points to a number of my priorities, one of which is, you know, parental engagement, another of which is curriculum, but also about how we need to think about our role in the school to prison pipeline and the inequities in our permit policies. Oh, I see that I'm freezing. And also to let you know that I'm not always going to stay in my lane. I am going to go above and beyond my duties. So let me just touch on platform points and be relatively quick. Of course, my first one is equity. And I'm just going to tell you straightforward, we have to. All of my platform points are informed by my lens of neuroscience and how the brain learns best. And the brain learns best when there are relationships. We got to build relationships. We got to find out what students and families need. Do they need technology, a quiet place to work? Are they caring for siblings? Are they working for a job? And really, it's about a racial justice framework. And that means putting the greatest needs first and foremost. And I will continue to put our historically underserved students first, okay? So the first one is that equity piece. The second one is hiring, and that's recruitment and retainment. We have excellent staff. They are our gems. And also our teaching staff is relatively homogenous compared to our student body. And so we want to recruit and retain staff that represent our values. And that means that cultural proficiency must also inform our hiring. I want to make sure our candidates use the most modern teaching methods, but are also all in on cultural inclusiveness. I want to be straight up and ask them if they have a successful track record of educating Black boys, if they see relationships as foundational to learning, and if they're committed to continual growth. And then a third platform point is student voice, and that's that engagement piece I talked about before. Parents and students need to be authentically included as we begin this conversation about remaking public schools in this era. The pandemic has had a profound impact on all facets of our society, but it's pulled the curtain back and it reveals a lot about where our schools need innovation, rigor for all, and parity. But parents have answers too. They know what their child's full potential as a human being is, but also students, when they're invited to the table, they're going to tell us what they need to be engaged, challenged, and inspired. And then a fourth platform point is around curriculum. All of our students need to be both challenged and inspired. What's going to inspire them to come to class every day under this radically different paradigm? For so many of them, that's arts integration. For much of them, that's going to come when they see themselves or the world they feel most connected to reflected in the content. But for all of them, that's going to come with the rigor that accompanies high expectations for every single student. Almost half of our graduates are not eligible for four-year university. We must demand college and career readiness for 100% of our graduating class. And so that means rigor for everybody. And then I really want to finish with some super exciting news, which is my endorsements. I know you guys are going to be just as proud as me. I have been endorsed by United States Congresswoman Karen Bass. Woo! I've been endorsed by council members Alex Fish, Thomas Small, Daniel Lee, Megan Sally Wells. I've been endorsed by my colleague, the only other educator on the board, Dr. Tashawn McKeithen. I've been endorsed by former school board presidents Nancy Goldberg, Stephen Schwartz, Barbara Honig. I've been endorsed by former mayors David Hauptman, Chris Armenta, and Gary Silbigger, and our very own Dem Club member, former LA City Controller, Rick Tuttle. And with that, I will say, I really, really, really hope that I can get all of your votes and your endorsement. I am such a proud Culver City Dem Club member, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kelly. And I'd like to ask you the first question. What is the most important thing, the one most important thing you hope to accomplish as a school board member if you are re-elected?
The one most important thing. I think the way I should answer that is what I think I can do in 4 years, and I think that that's changed graduation requirements. And it may seem technical and in the weeds, but I gotta tell you, it's very real. It's that last point I finished on. We have almost 50% of our kids do not graduate eligible for four-year university. And if we look at the background and we look at the racial and demographic background, and in terms of students with disabilities, that is inequitable stuff right there. And so that's the change. So I think it's going to be around graduation requirements. There are these technicalities in California where you have to have A through G completion to be able to go to a 4-year. So that's part of it. We need to have ethnic studies and gender studies as part of the graduation requirements. We need to detrack our classes, our AP and honors. That starts before secondary. We need to desegregate our elementary schools. We need to anyway, it's about getting kids to graduate 4-year college ready. So there's a lot to that, but I think it's a curriculum question, and that's what I'm going to really commit myself to.
Okay. This is from the Vote 16 Culver City folks. They ask, what is your position on the place of young people in politics?
Oh, those are my people. I mean, I support Vote 16. You know, I really try to support them. Any chance I get, they call me. But it's really not even just about the electoral process, which is important, but it's the decision-making things. You know, I mean, why aren't students sitting at our curriculum committee tables? Why don't I have a voting student board member? I want two voting student board members. Why aren't they part of the decision making? I don't know why a high schooler can't sit on that work with us, you know? And then I just really think they should be involved in the entire process. At the town hall that our POC for Change students held recently, they asked, why can't we lead the restorative practices work? I have that question too. They know how to do repair. I mean, and we can train them and we can give them extra tools, but they do know how to support each other. And really, they should get restorative practices training, and then they should train us and school the adults on how to repair our repressed emotions and all of the baggage that we carry with us. And so I really, really believe that we're going to be a better institution if we're including them at every single possible place.
Do you have school-age children enrolled in Culver City schools?
Of course. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. I have a 13-year-old who's an 8th grader, and I have, that's my daughter, and then I have a 9-year-old who is a 4th grader at Lynn Howe, and that's my son. Great.
Okay, this one is about a couple of organizations, local organizations that have been politically active. Have you sought the endorsement of Protect Culver City or the Culver City Police Officers Association? Have you accepted donations from either group or any of the officers or board members of either group? Or have you been actually endorsed by either group?
The Culver City Police Officers Association invited me to a forum. I declined to respond to that invitation because they had put out an attack ad on me the same weekend, and because I wouldn't entertain accepting money or an endorsement from a police union. And there are really good reasons for that. And I refer you to the latest episode of Pod Save America for an excellent podcast on police unions. And then, no, I wouldn't touch PCC with a 10-foot pole, but they do try to touch me all the time. You can look on their website for the slander, and but they would never endorse me. And if they ever even approximated it, I would tell them to get me off their website because it's vile.
What is the proper role of police officers in schools? Or if there is one, I mean, or is there one?
Here's what I'll say. I do not believe armed, uniformed police officers should be on school campuses. I believe that that firearms and uniforms instill fear into many students. And biologically speaking, fear interferes with learning. So anything that interferes with learning has no place on a school campus, okay, firstly. And so, yes, that means that I believe that we should not have school resource officers that are armed and uniformed on campus. I do not believe that anything that is going to increase anxieties, whether it's because of a history or a societal message or any other reason for that matter, it doesn't, that's not how we support kids.
Under what circumstances, if any, should a student be handcuffed, detained, or arrested by a police officer while on a school campus?
If that's happening, we've failed way long before that moment. So I can't think of a time when a student should be handcuffed. So I'm hard pressed to come up with an answer for that, because there isn't one that I can provide. We've obviously not provided the supports that student needs. If there's some sort of like fear of like really violent response, I mean, but really I would just ask us to think about, do students act violently towards people they trust? I think any of us would answer no. Wow. So it's incumbent on us to create a culture of trust where students will not feel desperate enough to do anything where we would ever have to restrict them, have to restrain them. There are restraint techniques that adults are trained in that have nothing to do with the use of handcuffs. And so there are much better ways. And so no, I don't see a reason for handcuffs.
What are your strategies to increase the amount of revenue available for school district operations? So
I have lots of, innovative ideas about revenue locally But I do want to just again plug Prop 15, y'all. You got to vote yes on schools and communities first. It's absolutely, everyone needs to help that measure pass, okay? Please, please. The Dem Club has endorsed it. The school board has endorsed it. It's extremely important. But locally, sure, I've thought about this a ton. In fact, I formed, a budget committee recently to talk about it in detail with people who are on the ground. One of the ways that I've been working on it is through our sustainability work. As I mentioned earlier, our sustainability coordinator identified tens of, like 70 grand in 6 months in savings. So there are plenty of offsets and savings that we can get through green initiatives, through power work, water work, waste work. I mean, it's really, that's going to be a huge win if we can continue our commitment along that line. But there are other things I've been asking staff to explore, like, why do we outsource our legal so much and pay for 5 different law firms when really we might be able to do with one in-house attorney or one set of in-house legal counsel for the most part. That seems like a source of savings. I've asked them to explore also healthcare. We happen to be signed on to the most expensive healthcare option in the state. And there are some districts that are looking at forming consortiums to save money in that way. So I've been probing there quite a bit. And I think that there's room. We've also had a recent staff audit that points to where there's some bloating, and it's not so much about, losing positions by any means, but about thinking about restructuring. And this is the moment, because people's jobs are taking on all sorts of different characteristics. So there's just room to explore, and we need to be bold enough to have those conversations.
Yeah, this is a question about the other candidates running for the 2 open seats on the school board. Which, if any, of the other candidates running do you align with the most, and why would you say that's true?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm endorsing Paula Amezola. So she's, a wonderful advocate for students. I mean, like she's gonna fight. She's gonna wanna be loud and bold, and that's really what we need. I mean, I think education is one of these institutions just holding on to the status quo for dear life. But let's be real, the status quo is white supremacy. So we do need to be willing to be bold and to shake things up. And then I'm also really excited about Paula because she's a native Spanish speaker and she's really tied to the English learner community in Culver City. And this is our weakest area. We have showed very little change for the better and actually some decline in our ability to serve this population. And so I'm really eager to have someone on the board that the English learner community feels that they can go to, because even those of us who do try to fight for English learners, I think, we do fall short because we either don't speak Spanish or don't look like we speak Spanish.
Okay, and the supervisor, LA County supervisor race for District 2, who do you support?
Oh, I'm a huge Holly Mitchell supporter, and I am hoping to have her endorsement in September, and I will keep you posted on that. She will fight for all the things that I care about, including getting rid of oil drilling where we're living, which is a big deal to me, and that affects our students' health.
Given all of today's challenges, has the school district done anything to develop emotional intelligence in students? And if yes, at what levels? And the third part is, from your perspective, is this sufficient?
Okay, it's not sufficient. We are doing more to develop social and emotional well-being is how I'm going to answer that. And what I would say is that the pandemic has twisted the district's arm. So I think some board members have been screaming about it from the rooftops for a while, not just me on this one. I do feel strongly about it because it's a brain-based strategy, but there are other board members as well. And I think that the pandemic, one of the silver linings is that it has forced the administration's hand to acknowledge that we are all, and students in particular, are being traumatized. They are being hurt right now, and we have to have trauma-informed pedagogies as we start this school year. And so the district administration did set aside You know, the first 7 days of instruction are supposed to be around relationship building and social and emotional strategies. I look forward to hearing more about it. I feel positive, but it is still not enough. It needs to be in every teacher's set of tools. All teachers need to feel comfortable with it, because while all teachers may believe in it, we haven't given them the support they need to actually implement it. So we need to do better. We need to do better.
Yeah, I'm going to we'll go till 2 minutes after 4 since we've been falling behind. So in 1 minute, I guess the question is, what are some of the challenges of this virtual learning process? And what are ways you would help students deal with these issues?
These past 2 days of school have been hard. I mean, spring was really hard, but we thought maybe we would, you know, start over and really have figured it out in the fall, and I'm just not sure we have. I mean, the digital divide is real, you know, so we have provided hardware to all of our students, but the whole Wi-Fi thing is still a real battle. And so that's gonna be a partnership with the city issue. This is a longer than 1 minute answer, but I'll just try to be real quick. We got to partner. We got to partner, honestly, with private partnerships, and we got to partner with other public entities to meet that digital divide need. But then, just to speak about the district in particular, we've got to individualize the instruction, right? So like the littles, they're not hanging on Zoom for 3 hours. And so we're going to have to be more flexible about how to meet the needs of those little kids. And then we're going to have to figure out how to better differentiate in this environment. And it's going to require more from teachers. They're working from 8 till midnight right now. And so we got to support them in this moment. We really need to bolster our love and nurturing of our teachers right now and staff. Sorry, I don't have more time for that. I would say more, but.
Well, I really appreciate your participating in our forum, as I do all the other candidates, and I thank all the participants for coming. This wraps it up for us today, and thanks to everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.